All right.
Am I,
We'll call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Our agenda this evening is visitors, approval of minutes, Foxborough High School art accomplishments, and then we're going to discuss the Massachusetts School Building Authority and the McGuire Group update on the Foxborough High School. After that, the Student Information System update, fiscal year 07 surplus approval, the fiscal 08 school committee schedule, followed by the elementary school improvement plans, Borough, Igo, and Taylor, a budget summary statement review of revolving accounts, and other matters. So the first item on the agenda this evening are visitors. Are there anybody who would like to speak?
Good evening, Hector Bayon, 153 North Street. Larry, congratulations. Welcome to the big chair.
Thank you.
We wish you all the best, and I know that it's going to be a very good year again. Last time I was here, I made some questions and presented some issues, and by now we all know, Larry, that you were the only one in the committee that had inclination to meet with me and discuss some of our points of disagreement. And I really appreciate your effort. You took some time out of your weekend, and we spent a couple hours. We spent some time in emails, and we learned a lot about our differences. You mentioned that you would do your best to persuade the committee to respond, and if it did not happen, that you would take care of that responsibility to our open issues. Now that you are the chairman, I know that you will do what you had offered. We have read in the paper a letter to the editor about a bullying of a student by a teacher. We also read of the frustration of the parent at not getting the details of what happened to her child, feeling that the rights of a teacher are protected to the detriment of the rights of her right to educate and protect her child. Then I read a letter to the editor, written by two teachers, who denied the right of the parent to get information and clarity that she needs to understand what happened. To this parent, as well as for many other people, the denial of due process of the parent's needs is another form of bullying. By not responding to our information requests, letters, etc., this committee is exercising another way of bullying. It is important for the community to hear from this committee and administration that we see by your actions that you take your obligation to protect the public seriously. Some of us are convinced that this committee is trying to correct all the wrongs from the past, but many of us need to regain the trust that the past experiences will not be repeated. It is a process that will take time and effort from all of us. Bullying is an issue that has been addressed many times by the committee. We expect that the corrective actions could start with the committee and administration by avoiding the easy option of no responses. Since you hold the power of information, we are bullied to submission and to accept that whatever you deem is enough information for us should be taken. When the public fights back, we are labeled troublemakers who want to run the schools, as that letter to the editor mentioned this week. I was told that the public is not interested in hearing what was done to us by the previous administration and committees. That is all news, and it takes away from the value of what we have been able to achieve so far. To forget what has been done to us is to allow history to repeat itself. To ask me to forget the bullying I faced with Mr. Spillane would be like asking those that were affected not to talk about slavery of the Holocaust. We cannot allow abuse of any kind to be repeated by anyone, individual or public body. Larry, please do not forget the infamous Collins report. I would like to know that one day it will be completed. That was the ultimate bullying that we faced. Thank you.
Hector, do you have a copy of that for everybody?
Certainly.
Okay, would you please? And in the future, it's easier for us if when you start, you give us the copy so we can follow through with you.
I think that it's better for everybody to pay attention to what is being said. And then you can respond, because it has never My experience has been that nobody responds anything in meetings. And by you reading, you are not going to read at my pace.
I understand
You are
that.
going to read at your pace, and I believe that the communication is going to be the same.
I understand that. But
And also, don't forget that many people may feel that they want to get up and talk without any papers.
I understand that. But the committee has indicated that when someone is going to make a several-minute discussion or several-minute speech, we would like to have a copy of that, same as any other public document, for a couple of reasons. One, we want the minutes to reflect what the person said, and two, for many of us, we take notes while people are talking. And it's much easier for the committee to make notes on your document next to the sections you're talking about. That's why we'd like to see it before you talk, so we can adequately reflect our
I
thoughts while
understand,
you're
and I
speaking.
don't have a problem.
Okay, thank you very much.
Beforehand, you asked for the copy when we finished, and I follow through the same way.
I
So
understand. So just in the future, I'm going to ask before you get started, because I don't know if you're going to be here to say 30 seconds or you're going to be here to say 3 minutes. So
only one condition,
yes.
that we get responses.
We will do our very best to respond to every
That's all.
letter that comes into the school committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that has any other comments as a visitor? Hearing none, we'll move on to the minutes. The minutes of May 21st. Do I have a motion?
I have just a question on one, and a suggestion on page 2, where it talks about emergency communication systems. We did, and Mary, I believe you were the one that used the word investigation. I'm not sure that in using it in this sentence, it means what we say. The committee also, it's almost near the end
Yes.
of the paragraph. It says the committee also noted that during an investigation, some details could not be answered due to security reasons. I believe what we were trying to say is that the committee also noted that not all information or details during a lockdown or emergency situation will be given for security reasons.
That's correct. They're saying that some people may ask, when do you do this, or when do you do that, or why do you do that? In some of those cases, we cannot explain that publicly.
Right.
So that's correct. So, Wendy, can you make that change, or do you want Kate to actually dictate it to you?
Can you just read it again, Kate, please?
The committee also noted that not all information or details on lockdown, either lockdown or emergency situations, will be answered due to security reasons.
And your other comment, Kate?
The question I had a question on page 3 under the district improvement plan. The sentence that reads, Mr. Harrington, page 3, under the district improvement plan. It says, Mr. Harrington commended the committee for presenting a clear, honest assessment. I believe it's just for clarification, and I'm sure we all know, but my question is the school committee or the strategic planning committee? I believe you were commending the strategic planning committee.
That's correct.
Okay, and I believe when Dr. Norton thanked the committee, she was also referring to this, not us,
Right.
but to the, not you and I, Larry, but
Right.
to the strategic planning. So I just thought for clarification that should be
Sure,
mentioned.
absolutely. Anybody else have any comments? Motion to approve with the changes? Motion made by Martha,
I'll second them.
seconded by Beverly. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Dr. Norton, the next item is Foxborough High School art accomplishments.
Yes, we invited, we have some, no surprise to anyone, but we have some wonderful artists in Foxborough. We invited the students who won accommodations this past week to come. They have elected not to come to a school committee meeting. I don't know why, but they're not here. So it is with pleasure, as soon as I find it, Randy, where'd it go? There it is. That I commend Eric Lawrence Jr., Amanda Dickerman, and Daniel Brooks for their high honors. Eric and Amanda won merit awards at this year's High Art 2007. juried high school art competition hosted each year by the Attleboro Museum. And Daniel Brooks entered a statewide branding contest sponsored by the newly formed Metro West Regional Transit Authority. The newly formed authority wanted a name and logo and/or name and slogan to establish a brand identity for the new Metro West Transit Authority. Dan won, so you're going to be able to see his work on the Metro West Transit Authority materials. He won a first place prize of $1,000, and we congratulate Dan and all of the students for all of their wonderful work, and especially we want to thank Mr. Jerry Roy for helping his students.
Excellent. One item I should have noted on the agenda is we had talked at the last meeting about doing an update with the chief on the security issue, but the chief is out of town this evening and could not make it, so we're going to postpone that to our next meeting.
Just so it's not an error, the chief is here this week, but he was not here last week.
Okay.
So we couldn't coordinate anything. So, in fact, I talked with him this evening, so
Okay.
we'll get it ready.
So we'll get it ready for the next meeting, just so the public knows that we're following through on what our promise was. The next two items on the agenda we're going to combine together. It's a discussion of the Massachusetts School Building Authority as well as an update on the high school project and what we would need to do. Before Paul begins, I want to recognize that we have our representative from the state senator. His chief of staff is here tonight. We have our representative, Mr. Barrows, is here tonight. We have a member of the Board of Selectmen who's here this evening, and we have the town accountant that I see this evening as well. And it's important to have all of these folks here because, first of all, there are some things that Paul will bring up that we want our state senator and our state rep to be advocating for on our behalf. And so it's important that they understand the issues from our perspective. It's important to have the selectmen here this evening because if we go forward with our request to the state, it has to be approved jointly by the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. So we want to make sure that the selectmen are fully aware of the issues, the ramifications, what we're doing, why we're doing it, so that we can garner their support as well. And we have the town accountant here because anytime it has to do with money, we want to have him here as well. And so we welcome all of them that are here. The other thing I would like, as long as we have the state rep and representative from the state senator's office, I want to remind you how important it is on behalf of the school committee regarding cable access. In our community, we are very supportive of cable access. They literally donate thousands of hours, and I'm not kidding when I say thousands, whether it be football games, music programs, sporting events, school committee members. These folks donate literally thousands of hours so that the community knows what's going on the selectmen's meeting, the school committee. Parents can have tape recordings of their children in sporting events or music events or artwork, anything else. And so as you're looking at this bill that is before your house, we have sent you a letter specifically asking you to support the current situation. We want to make sure that since we have you here in person, we don't miss the opportunity for you to know how much we very much support. And for those at home, there's a small price we each pay in our monthly cable bill that is used to fund the equipment that is used to produce all these shows. And it is invaluable from our viewpoint that the community continue to have that access, and we hope we would have your support for that. And so we've sent you a letter to that, but I thought if you're here in person, we should take advantage of that. I'll turn the meeting over to Paul at this point.
Thank you. Prior to the passage of Chapter 208 of the Acts of 2004, schools throughout the state were funded in terms of building or renovation projects through a department that was under the auspices of the Department of Education, commonly known as SBAB, School Building Assistance Bureau. Chapter 208 of the Acts of 2004 has changed this, and a new authority has been created, now called the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA. What I'm going to present tonight, I plagiarized from the Mass School Building Authority and boiled down to about 12 slides, a 57-slide presentation that they've given to both the legislature and the group of treasurers. What I tried to do was to boil it down to the most important points to give you a flavor of the new authority as well as an indication of the types of things that we are going to need to do, which are entirely different than what we would have done when it was part of the Department of Education. MSBA involvement from initial description of problem through project approval, construction, and completion. They're going to have a much more of a collaborative involvement in the project as opposed to the old SBAB. Once they gave you the authority, it was pretty much up to the local school building committee to go through the project in terms of oversee the construction. They're trying to create a low-cost application process for municipalities. The process begins with local determination of a problem, not a solution, as articulated by the community in the statement of interest, which is referred to as the SOI. The SOI is the first step in the process that we need to complete. They will not take in, there are no designs required until the project is approved by MSBA. MSBA will procure and pay for enrollment projections, facility and maintenance assessments, assuming that you get to the steps down the road. They have a sliding scale for school sizes based on enrollment, and the new size standards are more sensitive to actual building layouts. They have a quicker payment schedule. They've changed the way the school building projects are funded, and you will be paid as you pay the contractor, so it's kind of a pay-as-you-go. Approved projects will not wait indefinitely for state funding. Under the old regime, you could have an approved project, but you might wait years before the funding finally arrived. Approval for the MSBA funding is based on local need in context of statewide evaluation of statutory criteria, not self-determined need. Now that basically means that we'll fill out a statement of interest. That statement of interest will be thrown in a pile, as I understand it, and our needs will be compared to the needs of every other school district in the state in terms of how we fit against the criteria that I'll show you in a minute, and how we stack up against the other statement of needs that have been filled out. Project scope will be defined by a collaborative process between the municipality and the MSBA. That basically means we might come in and say to the MSBA that we want to put a new boiler in, and they may come back and say, well, our information is that you should put in a series of small boilers as opposed to one large boiler. There's a collaborative process, and eventually a decision is made that satisfies both the MSBA as well as the local school district. School building committees will exist. MSBA will approve the membership, which is dramatically different than the old way. Focus on maintenance. Statutory requirements will be adhered to, and MSBA will provide maintenance trust fund to match eligible communities. If you'll remember, I want to say a year ago, MSBA commissioned a study, and they went out and they evaluated every school in the state, and we were a little concerned that we had a number one, which was the top rating here at the high school, and couldn't understand why would we get a number one when in fact the building was 30 plus years old and things are starting to wear out and need to be replaced. And the information that we got back was that we got the number one because we've done a real good job of maintaining our building. In recognition of schools that have done a good job of maintenance, there's this fund that's been set up, and that we will actually be eligible for some additional points on our reimbursement based on the fact that we've done a good job of maintaining the schools. Had we been in a situation that we had a poor rating, we would not be eligible for this trust fund. There's another major change in that there'll be a project manager in addition to a clerk of the works for over $5 million, Mike, that are required, and they become an essential go-between between MSBA, the town, and the school in this process. Local financing costs will no longer be eligible. No bands, bonds, no interest. This goes along with the pay-as-you-go situation. Approved projects that are on approved projects, so a project that has been approved by MSBA that run into a snag, and then there's a local circumstance that doesn't allow the project to continue, will lose their approval status and the funds will be given to another district. Now, the statutory criteria for new projects. So these are the criteria with which we need to fill out our statement of interest. anything that has to do with the health and safety of the building.
Well, would that include the asbestos?
Yes.
Okay.
Existing severe overcrowding, which at this point we would not be able to file under that criteria. Loss of accreditation, prevent future severe overcrowding, increase energy conservation and decrease energy costs, replace obsolete buildings, and then transition from court-ordered racial balance districts, walk-through districts, which, again, we wouldn't fulfill. So as we fill out our statement of interest, we will be keying in on health and safety. We're going to touch a little bit on loss of accreditation in that the science labs were mentioned in the NEASC report, that those needed to be updated, that they no longer fit the need programmatically, and increase energy conservation, decrease energy costs, and then replace obsolete buildings. There'll be a series of statements regarding the different things in the building that we feel that Mike will talk about through the McGuire report that we feel needs to be addressed. The new process as an overview. Local community identifies the deficiencies in school facilities through the statement of interest process, the SOI that I referred to. Then MSBA will review our SOI, and assuming that they feel that it is valid and it is on the list at a high enough level compared to everybody else in the state, we'll get to the next step, and the next step is they come out, they work with the local community to validate the deficiencies that have been identified. If they review our statement of interest and they do not feel that it's going to make the list based on the needs across the state, then you don't make it to step 2. Step 3, evaluation of potential solutions. They'll work in collaboration with the local community to identify potential solutions. When the solution is confirmed, in terms of an agreement on how the problem should be rectified, an appropriate course of action, and then ultimately implement the agreed upon solution. And along this way, the town would have to appropriate funds to fund the part that would not be eligible for reimbursement. The statement of interest, the deadline for submission is July 31st. It's a pre-application. It describes our facilities problem and the initial engagement of the MSBA. MSBA feels this should not cost anything other than usual staff time and no reimbursement for any costs incurred in submitting the SOI. We have to submit it electronically along with 3 hard copies, and then they will provide the due diligence on the basis of SOI and invite communities to apply on that basis. So again,
Well, how long will they take in that process to evaluate across all the state and get back to us?
We don't know, because this is all brand new, and this is all starting really as of July 1st.
Okay.
So that there's still a certain amount of uncertainty as to exactly how the process will go and what will happen where it is a brand new authority.
Okay.
So the next steps. Part of our process to have the authorization to submit the statement of interest, the school committee must vote and the Board of Selectmen must vote to authorize the school superintendent to submit the statement of interest form. If the school committee or the Board of Selectmen do not vote, they will not accept our statement of interest. And then we need to provide certifications of both votes, assuming that they're in the affirmative, as well as provide a document that would need to be signed by the town manager, the school superintendent, and the chairman of the school committee. And that gets us in the front door and gets us into the situation where they'll start to review our request along with everybody else in the state. And that's really a really brief overview of the 57-slide presentation that MSBA has presented.
Questions from the committee? Questions from anyone in the audience on that piece?
I think just a point to make.
Representative Barrows, if you would come up to the microphone so that people can hear you at home,
Sure.
it's easier.
Yeah, I had just received some information earlier today that there have already been 213 statements of interest submitted, with many more to follow. So your question about how long it'll take, I don't know how many that will end up being, but 213 is a lot, where we've had a moratorium for as long as we have had. So
Do you know how much funding the state has towards this?
I think they were talking about $500 million a year to limit it to that. And reimbursement rate will range from 40 to 80% of construction cost.
Okay.
So So that's really all I have at this point, and look forward to advocating as soon as you're ready.
Okay, great.
All right?
I do have one question.
Okay. Mark, you want to go first?
A couple of things. Foxborough has buildings that are in really good shape, and because we have such an incredible staff that maintains our buildings, on the outside and on the inside, they look good. It's our under foundation and all our other things that are at issue, like the science labs. When you read down through our report, you're going to see that there's some issues with probably safety within the science labs that need to be addressed, whether or not we get this kind of funding that we're really going to have to get into. I guess my concern is when we went in for the Mass Association of School Committees Day on the Hill there, it's almost like school systems like Foxborough, because we do maintain our buildings, will be punished for that because we have a very high rating. And there is a definite need here, and there's a high cost figure that's involved with what we have to do, not something that we can just run up to the town hall and expect them to fund this for us. So I think something needs to be said in a school system's favor, a town's favor, that does maintain their buildings and doesn't let them just fall to the ground and then come in and it's such a disaster you have to put them at the top of the list. That's not fair to us, or cities or towns that are maintaining their buildings. And I think that needs to be addressed because we shouldn't be punished for trying to maintain our buildings, and essentially that's what's happening. And I think somehow that has to be redefined because why should we be punished? Because we do such a great job and we have such a maintenance team, and Michael Leary and his group, they're incredible what they do in this town. So I think that needs to be addressed.
I know you mentioned the trust fund that's being set up to hopefully, smooth that out, but it probably isn't going to be enough.
No.
Because what's difficult is we've got windows that are 36, 37 years old, heating system that's 36, 30. I mean, most of the infrastructure, the roof, has reached its livelihood.
Right.
And so those are in need of repair. And so at the end of the day, what we want to do as a school committee is work as hard as we can with the state to get as much funding as we can. But ultimately, we've been talking about these issues at the high school for a number of years. So we can't go on continuing to talk and talk and talk. At some point, if the state is not going to provide the funding, then it is up to us as a school committee to work with the selectmen and build the case to the voters that the high school does need updating. And so we're hoping that over the next year and a half, we can continue to work with the state. But at some point, if we can't get state funding, the school committee has to commit to work with the selectmen and go to the voter and ask the voter for some of that, because that heating system is going to fail at some point. The cost with single pane windows with the aluminum frames around there, our heating costs are sky high. The roof is close to needing repair. So there are these kinds of things that are going to happen in the next few years, and whether we're going to get the money from the state or some assistance from the state or from the taxpayer, we believe we need to show the taxpayer that we're handling their money appropriately. We're going through every effort to try to find funding sources other than the taxpayer or the property taxpayer in Foxborough. But ultimately, that's where we may end up being 2 years down the road if we can't seem to get some relief from the state.
I have a question as far as, we realize that when this building was put in and our attention towards students who are handicapped, there was a lot of things that need to be done in this building probably to readdress that. And yet, if we do any sort of renovations or whatever within the system, unfortunately, we automatically have to turn around and make ourselves more handicap accessible than we are now, which is a huge, huge item for us at this point, because just to replace the doorknobs within the system, it's incredible how much it's going to cost us. And I guess my question is, if this doesn't go through, is there a way of us piecemealing this? And it's not that I'm trying to get away from redoing this, but if apparently there is a threshold, am I wrong?
I think it's a percentage of the
Right.
total rehab that kicks that in. I don't know what that is.
Right. It's a fairly low threshold.
Yeah.
Almost any one of our projects would be big enough to kick that in from what we've been told in the past.
Unfortunately.
But the report says, isn't that we may qualify for an exemption up to, what is it, 11.4
Right.
million?
Well, what I'm saying is
So-
if we do it in, say we don't get the funding, and if we don't get something from the town that we can go ahead and bond or do whatever we have to do in order to do this, get a debt exclusion, would we be better off piecemealing it and not having to add that into the component at this point, too?
Well, I think at this point, the statement needs to get submitted,
Yep.
And let's move forward, and we'll begin the process of advocating and watching. As I said earlier, there's 213 already in. There'll probably be, as what you're doing tonight, discussing it and moving forward, there's probably going to be others that will be submitting, and how they're going to sort through. I assume the applications are pretty tight. I haven't seen it, but I assume that it's going to be tight so that they can craft a way to give a point system or what have you to where you're at. But again, you need to be committed as a committee and as a community on maintaining and doing what you've done with the school and with the system itself and within the district. And hopefully that will show through, and that we're not crying wolf where we've reached the life expectancy of the facility that you have, and you need to move it forward now and not wait for it to crumble in 10 years and spend that much more money.
That's right.
And I think this new approach, it seems to have a little bit more sense to it. And I know the moratorium has allowed them a chance to close out some projects, which you had one, I believe, that was closed out. And again, audits and so on and so forth that they've been doing. So I think we've learned a lot from the past, and hopefully the future will be brighter.
It's almost like they've taken on a construction loan mentality. In other words, when the work's completed, go ahead and pay for it, which is much more pleasing to a city or a town, instead of having to wait for a whole job to be completed, for it to be looked over, and then for us to sit back and pray that you're going to still give us the money.
Get the money, right. Right.
That doesn't, this is, I think, a much more practical approach, and one that seasoned towns might want to take advantage of. But I think they have to take into consideration the age of the building. I mean, if you're going to come in and tell us that a 20-year-old building takes precedence over us who have maintained a building for 36 years or whatever, that's a bit of pill to swallow.
Right.
It really
Absolutely.
is.
No, I agree.
And I hope, whoever's reviewing this or whatever, that they're going to take everything into consideration. And I think you really have to take a look at all of that.
Kate, you got a comment?
And actually, I have a question why Representative Barros is here, and also Mr. O'Neill. We have received reimbursements for the Ahern, but did we ever finally receive the final reimbursement for the IGO renovation? That was still held up due to an audit. And while you were here, I would like to plead. This was a building that was completed in 1994, and we still have not gotten the last payment for the IGO. And that's something that impacts our town. And in 2003, we had to, because of reduced funding, we had to cut $1 million, or $2 million. The schools took $1 million, and the town took $1 million. We are a well-run town, and we work very closely with the selectmen. But we've had these capital, we've talked about windows alone for 4 years. We are not able to do the things we want. We're thrilled that there was this moratorium, but we still have not gotten a payment for a building that was finished in 1994 because the state will not schedule the audit. I believe that's what's been held up. So if there's any leverage that you can bring to help us.
We'll ask the town accountant just to give us a quick update on that. If you just, Randy, would come up to the microphone.
Be happy to pass that off.
I would think so.
We haven't been there that long. We'll hear that much.
Great question. As you know, the Ahern audit was completed about 1.5 years ago, and we received full reimbursement. Actually, we did really well. We were part of the pilot program for all of the audits across the state. We were one of the first 12, and that's where they set the standards from those audits, and we volunteered for that because we had a lot of money outstanding. We had carrying $25 million on our balance in a loan, and we finally got our $18 million, and that's been put to bed. 11 months ago, we received notification that they were ready for our next project to be audited, which is the IGO, and that one's older and smaller, but the simple fact of the matter is that I need to be able to get to that work in order to work with the auditor that they've assigned in order to complete the audit process. And I just received the documents over the winter that have been sitting in a warehouse at the DOE for 11 years, and got them. And when I went through them, they're not in great shape. The work has to be, the work that's required for the auditors and the MSBA to approve final audit basically has to be redone from scratch, the 2 key forms. And we do not have the institutional memory for that. That was here at the time, and it is an awful lot of work, having gone through it with the Ahern, which was not as old a project, but it was larger and still very problematic to comply with what is a 100% audit. And I'm sure that's something, Larry, you can appreciate. It's every invoice, every contract, every financing, every interest payment, bond issuance, everything has to be substantiated with original documents. And so we had to do a lot of work to find all those for the Ahern, and we did. Now we have an older project which we have to do that for. I'm committed to have that done within the calendar year, so that will get done. And the good news with this project is that any true-up to those payments, which right now we're being funded at what was estimated 11 years ago at 75% of what the state was going to reimburse us for. So there's another 25% potentially to come. And that money, because most of this was funded through excluded debt, will go straight to the taxpayer as a reduction on the excluded debt amounts that we need to raise. So it's not necessarily going to increase what's available out of our general funds, but it will certainly ease in a small way the burden for the taxpayer, and I'm committed to completing that audit in the same fashion that we did with the Ahern.
How much money do you think it is?
It could be a few $100,000. But they do that one differently. With the Ahern, they paid us in lump sum because they didn't pay us for any of the costs up front. With this project here, we're currently being paid 75% of the debt service. So what will happen is that they will then pay us the remainder that they owe us over the remaining life of the bonds.
So did we err in not asking for it to be done, or did the
No,
DOE err
no.
in having it sit in a box someplace?
The state was not able to do that, and then the moratorium happened.
Yeah, they were not prepared to do. They stopped doing the audits years ago,
Right,
and
reorganized.
they prioritized. It was a 4-year list of a $5.5 billion backlog of audits, and the Ahern was rated to be done in the first year, and we did it in the first. We were actually before the first year we were in the pilot program. The IGO became ripe for audit and assigned to an audit firm 11 months ago, and then we finally connected with the audit firm, and I asked for the box of documents to look at them, because they, unlike in the pilot program, we established the standards by which the audits would be done. It was a joint process with the MSBA to determine how long it would take, what the process would be, what's eligible, what's not. And so now there's a standard to meet in terms of how much time it should take you to get through an audit. And if it takes you longer than the standard we establish, you will end up paying for contract rates, for the parts of the audit that don't fit within the timeframes that they've allowed. So I know we have a lot of work ahead of us on the IGO, just given the shape of the documents and the staleness of the project. So I did not want to go forward and say, let's start, knowing that it was actually going to cost us more money.
Right. The few $100,000, Randy, is that a lump sum payment, or will that be over the life of what our remaining debt service is?
Yes, it'll be over the life of the remaining debt service.
So that few $100,000 a year that will go right to the taxpayers through servicing the debt service, and how many, do you know off the top of your head how many more years we have left on the IGO?
I believe on that one there's about another 6-7 years off the top of my head.
I would just like to say that I have complete confidence. My money's on our town finance director. I know it will be done.
Thank you.
Very appropriately.
Apologize for any delay.
We do have a list of
but we will-
people. If you
we will get
need
it done.
institutional memory, we do have a
I may be
list.
calling.
We will help you. So,
Any other
I think what we
comments?
I have one other question, if I may. One other thing, and why we have our representative and selectman here. Out of the statutory criteria, the list of 7, there are 4 that are no-brainers for us. The health and safety, the loss of accreditation, the energy conservation and decreasing our energy costs, replacing an obsolete building. But I'd also like to just bring up, Larry, you have mentioned over the last numerous months getting with the planning board.
Correct.
We may not, and when we did the budget, surprised to find out with our state or not state, I'm sorry, with our town census being somewhat flat, our residency numbers, we know we barely squeaked through on the budget this year based on, we're not in a housing boom. But because we do have the state hospital and we have building that will be coming online, you had suggested meeting with the planning board, and perhaps they might be available for June 18th, because I do believe that, and there were projections that were done years ago, and if there's anything that we can do, because I think the onus on us is to prevent future severe overcrowding. If this is a $12 million project, I would hate to submit this to the town and to the taxpayers and say, oh, well, we're facing overcrowding 2-3 years from now. That would be very unacceptable. So I think we need to be able to say to the taxpayers, is it $12 million or so to fix the school and to renovate it, or are we going to address all of our long-term student needs? Because we have a borough, we have Taylor, we may never get to or qualify for renovating them, but we may want to factor in something. If the numbers are going to come, we may need to allocate what numbers of classrooms we have at the Ahern and how we allocate people to the high school. And I would just like to have that factored in once and for all and be able to say, based on our 5-year or 8-year plan, this is what we know that we will need, and make that a very fact-based, so that there are no surprises. Because we've been at this 3 years, we know that there's a moratorium, but it may take us still X amount of time, and 3 years from now, when the state hospital building is complete, or all of the other apartments, I don't want to turn around and say to taxpayers, we didn't do that piece, and your class size is, and we're in an overcrowding situation. So if we could work with the planning board, selectmen, advisory, whoever, I think we should make that case.
Just so you know, Wendy has been negotiating with the planning board over the last several weeks to find a date. As you know, Patriot Place has consumed a lot of their time, so they've not been able to meet with us to date. They are anxious to meet with us, and we're going to work something out shortly. But in addition to that, Kate, one of the issues that we have to think about as a community is we've talked as a school committee about full-day kindergarten. And that full-day kindergarten will also take and require additional space in our other schools. So one of the things that we want to try to do is to look at all of our school needs, not just from a build-out standpoint, but also what is the impact if we put in a full-day kindergarten. So the initial study that we did was on the high school in terms of maintenance areas to update. Part of the discussion that Dr. Norton has been having, and Paul as well, is about what is the capacity of the buildings, what are the average class sizes today, what is the capacity in each building, those kinds of things. And hopefully that will all work its way into the final document that will be presented to both the selectmen and the school committee, so that we have all the information we both need jointly to make our decision in recommending going forward a plan or a request that is the most appropriate for the town of Foxborough.
Larry, it's probably going to just be a short period of time before full-day kindergarten is going to be mandated.
Right.
So we're not going to have a choice on that. So it's something that we have to address probably now in the next year or two.
And Paul's already worked up our theoretical capacity in each of the buildings. You know, if you use a class size of 20, 25, 30, I mean, he's done multiple levels of students. What would that mean in terms of the capacity? What is it today? And as Dr. Eli's been thinking through the kindergarten program on a full-day basis, that's one of the factors that she's building into her analysis as well. So there's lots of work we still have to do before this is due in July, because we are right, we don't want to just submit we'll call it the repairs and maintenance, if we're also going to need some building expansion because of growth. So we're trying to do all that at the same time. Any other questions from anybody before we actually start to now hear of the project for the high school itself and what's in need of repair? Paul, you want to move on to that piece?
I'd like to invite Michael Leary up, and Mike's going to handle the presentation on the McGuire Group piece.
Thank you. When we knew the SOI was going to have to be done, we had 12 areas of concern we brought to the school committee, and they thought it was a good idea to hire an architect to come in and evaluate these for us, to give us an idea of what it would cost and how we would phase it in. So we put out a proposal, and the McGuire Group was selected. This is the same architects that did the Ahern School for us. and we asked them to come in and do an evaluation of the high school. Before I start, I'd just like to read one sentence or two from the executive summary. It says, "The building is in good condition and well-maintained. The report found that the majority of the above items require replacement due to their age and outdated performance." So to put this in perspective, I know a lot of homes built in 1972 that are well-maintained and in good condition. And I'll bet you their boiler has been replaced, they're on their second or third water heater, I know they're on their second roof, all their appliances in the kitchen I'm sure have been replaced, maybe new counters and the cabinets refaced, and the bathroom has been completely overhauled. The high school is no different. We're a 35-year-old home that needs upgrades. So just to give us some idea, why we're looking at it from that point of view. Okay, the purpose of the evaluation of specific building elements. We gave them 12 items to look at, areas of concern, and we asked them, while you're looking at these 12 items of concern, if you see anything else, please bring it forward, look at it, give us a price, so on. So they were to provide an itemized list of concerns by priority. They were going to describe each item by existing condition and then provide recommendations and associated costs for each item, considering the current state local codes. The 8 items of concern we gave them was asbestos abatement, replacement of windows, replacement of the roof, fire alarm system, hot water tanks, unit ventilators, pneumatic controls, which also includes an energy management system, replacement of the boilers, obviously the upgrade of all our 10 science rooms, and then the renovate of our laboratories to meet the current MAAB code, handicap code. And when we do that, then we have to replace all the door hardware. None of our door hardware now meets the current MAAB code. And then last but not least, look at the gymnasium floor. The asbestos removal, this would have to be phased in. There is some fireproofing above ceilings. We have asbestos tile in some of our areas. We are currently in the process of abating all of the asbestos tile in all our elementary schools. We're at the IGO this year, which will pretty much conclude that building, except for the library, which will be done when the rug has to be replaced, and then we'll move down to the Taylor and complete that. So all the asbestos abatement asbestos tile in all the elementary schools will be done over the next 2 years. Again, it would have to be abated in this school, again, along with the fireproofing above the ceiling. Some of the piping, a lot of it is fiberglass insulation, but a lot of the fittings, elbows, valves, etc., have asbestos which have to be removed. The problem with this, some of the recommendations or corrections we want to do can be phased in while school is in process. We can do window replacement. We just empty 2 rooms. We can do the roof while classes are in session. It's not a problem. Asbestos abatement we would not do at all with students in the classroom or in the school. So it would have to be phased in over a few summers. And again, the cost was well over $4 million. Window systems, the existing windows, single pane, aluminum frames. A lot of them have operating lower windows. Again, they're distorted. They're cold. You get near them in the winter, you can actually feel the chill. We've actually had frost form on some of the windows. When the wind whistles,
we had a selectman who stood there and watched the wind. Didn't we light a match in our tour, Mr. Thrasher? I believe you noticed how airy and breezy our science rooms were. Thank you again for coming.
We run around in the winter and we take weather stripping and we kind of strip and tape around some of the window openings to reduce the infiltration. But the windows definitely have to be replaced. Again, that's close to $1 million. The roof system,
Mike, I just think it's interesting that these folks can estimate it down to the nearest $8.
Yeah, I know.
I
That
might
was
have thought
pretty
their
good.
estimate might have been 915,000, 920, but it's interesting
Yeah.
that they're so good they can get it down to
They are good, and
$628.
they projected that out to 2010, so that's even better.
But keep in mind, you've been projecting this cost for us for the last several years, because it had
Pretty
been on
close.
our capital list. We had to
Yeah.
take it off, but each year when we'd ask,
Yeah,
you
we've been
you
at the
were very close
900,000
to this
range.
number.
Pretty
so-
close.
You know, it's amazing, though, what we have to be careful of is that we don't get into the same trap we got into with the fire and police and put it off. It's going
Well-
to cost us more and more and more. And I think that's something
Unfortunately,
that's a lesson hard learned, the same thing with the Ahern School, so it's time to take action.
The roof has a few more years life expectancy. The original roof on this was what they call the BU, built-up roof. Tar, gravel, one of the worst roofs you can put on, a flat roof in New England. With the heat and the cold, it expands, it contracts, it expands, it contracts, cracks, and so on. The roof on this building didn't last 10 years. I remember the Borough roof didn't last 2 years, and that was a built-up roof. So in the early 80s, this roof was replaced with an EPDM membrane-type roof. The membrane right now is still in very good shape, considering its age, 23 years or so. The seams, some of them are starting to go. We make minor repairs as we find them and as leaks develop. But this roof eventually is going to have to be replaced. New tape and insulation, new roof drains, new flashings, and all the curbings. Curb flashing has to be replaced around the exhaust fan. And I was a little off. I estimated this would be about $1.75 million. They're estimating $200–2.25 million for this. It's a very large roof and quite a bit of work. Fire alarm system, the existing fire alarm system, it's not an addressable system. It's adequate, but it does not have the coverage required in the newer buildings now. Smoke detectors are at least 40 feet apart. None of the classrooms have smoke detectors. Some have heat detectors, the labs, and so on. The pull boxes, although adequate, do not meet the new handicap code. They're a little too high. We don't have the strobes in the bathrooms and so on that are required under the handicap codes right now. So a new addressable system would be around the $290,000 range. All right. Hot water tanks, we have two 1,300-gallon hot water tanks that are well past their life expectancy. Why they're not leaking, I don't know, and I just hold my breath, yes. They're much larger. The only thing I disagree here is in the report, they estimate to replace them, we should put gas-fired independent hot water tanks. And what would that accomplish was, right now, when I need hot water, I have to run the boiler. I can shut the pumps off that supply heat to the building, but the boilers must run to give me hot water. This would be great. As soon as I hit May, or whenever I could shut the boilers down, we shut them down completely, and we just run a small hot water tank. They estimated to replace them with existing size tanks. I don't think we need that much hot water. We don't use as many showers as we used to, and so on. But again, we're probably in the $150,000 range. Unit ventilators, again, they're 35 years old. The controls are almost non-existent. We keep replacing motors, we keep replacing coils. We can keep them going. They do supply heat. Not great in some of the rooms, but they are heated. They do supply ventilation. They bring in fresh air. The exhaust fans in the roof, they're all 35 years old. We do rebuild them, new bearings, new motors, etc. So we do get the proper air changes in the classrooms. Again, in the bitter cold weather, some of the rooms are tough to get up over 64, 65 degrees. So we recommend replacing the unit ventilators, and at the same time, the controls would be replaced with DDC, would get rid of the pneumatic system. In conjunction with that, the energy management system, when we go with a DDC system, direct digital control, we get rid of the pneumatics. We can have a system similar to the Ahern School, where the whole heating and cooling system is computerized. So at a certain hour, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we shut down the Ahern School. The whole building shuts down, and then it monitors itself all winter long. If a room gets too cold, it'll kick the heat on for 10 minutes and shut it off. Allows us to shut the building down for weekends and pick up the energy savings on the boilers and on the electricity. This building, we kind of do it manually. Because it's a different type of system, we have to keep, obviously, the boiler running because I got to have hot water. So we can't shut a boiler off, but we do shut off pumps. If it gets bitter cold, one of us will run up, throw the pumps on for a while overnight, and then shut them off in the daytime. So we kind of have our own energy management system here, only it's done manually.
What are you going to do with all that extra time if it comes to fruition? You know, you won't be running up there.
Could be that much older.
Yeah. So again, part of this energy management system is to get rid of all the pneumatic controls, go with DDC. Boiler replacement. The boilers right now are Fire 2 boilers, 2-pass. To give you some idea, the 3 Wiesman boilers down at the Ahern School, they're running about 89 to 90% efficient. They're a condensing type boiler, which means that allows me to run water at 100 degrees, 90 degrees, to heat that building in marginal days. Because these boilers are non-condensing type, I have to run this water at least 140 degrees, or I get condensation and acid condensation coming down from the flue gases, and it'll actually deteriorate the boiler. So it would be nice to replace these boilers. The efficiency of them, you know, we do clean them every summer. We clean the tubes, tune them up, put them in. If I get 70%, 75% efficiency in these boilers, we'd be doing pretty good. Again, compared to 89% efficient for Wiesmans. Right now, they are in good shape. We're doing an internal inspection with the insurance company this summer. External, they're good, safeties work, etc. So, but I think down the road, we're going to incur some high maintenance costs, along with some high operating costs. Science labs, obviously, they're like your home, your kitchen. Casework cabinets have to be upgraded. We don't have shunt trips. We don't have emergency gas shutoffs off the fire alarm system, etc. We do have a manual system. GFI outlets are almost non-existent, so we should have emergency power shunts and so on, along with new casework, and change the complete design. Right now we have the old bench after bench. The new theory is to have benches on the sides and an open type classroom seating to all of these. So there's 10 labs that would have to be renovated at a cost of $1.1 million. Then lavatory accessibility, obviously, once we start major renovations, we have to meet the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board codes. So all our labs, we do have handicapped accessibility. Problem is our toilets are a few inches off. Some of the stalls aren't quite large enough. The handicapped accessibility, some of the sinks aren't. But again, we do meet the handicapped accessible code that was in effect when this building was built. But the minute we start extensive renovations, we have to meet the new code. And door hardware would come in under that. The good thing about replacing the door hardware, over 35 years here, this building has probably been keyed and rekeyed 100 times. My custodian walks around with a key ring with 100 keys to get in. I won't carry them. I carry just enough keys to get me in the essential areas, and if I need to get in them, I have to get a custodian if the door is locked. I refuse to carry 100 keys. I just won't do it. But it would be nice, like the Ahern School is on a master, submaster system, so you can have many submasters you want and have one grandmaster, where the fire department would need one key to get in. So that would be the one advantage of doing the door hardware. But again, it don't come cheap, $465,000. Gymnasium floor. Gym floor is 35 years old. We do refinish it every summer. If you look at it at first glance, it doesn't look that bad. Start looking under the bleachers, start looking at doorways where they've been wet and so on, and it needs an upgrade. We keep sanding it down so it keeps getting thinner and thinner. So eventually the gym floor is going to have to be redone. The good thing is the bleachers are going to be done this summer. We've already awarded the contract, and they should be starting in 2 weeks. So the group bleachers will be upgraded, handicapped accessible, safety rails, and so on, which would not affect change in the gymnasium floor. Would have to do that anyways. The bleachers would just be unbolted, moved, new floor set in, and then the gym reset. So total cost is $12,900,000.
Here's that round number you were looking for.
Yeah, that's right. That's, yeah. The 08.
But for how long?
Yeah.
She said, Martha, the public safety building
Any
is
questions?
14.
Yeah, Mike, you gave a lot of details about how you accommodate to the deficiencies in the high school. Is that kind of information, that seems very critical, that information that you gave us today. Is that information going to be included in the statement of interest? Okay. I'm talking about the details that you're giving us, Mike, in terms of the day-to-day operations of how you and your staff accommodate to our, this problem.
I don't know to what detail we may get into that. What they did state in the statement of interest is when we go in for energy conservation, obviously under that one of the 8, we're going to stress, it states in there, what have you done to date? And we've done electrical retrofitting, light retrofitting in this whole school. We just finished the Borough School. The Ahern obviously meets all the new codes. They have occupancy sensors, T5 bulbs, etc. So the Ahern meets all the current energy codes as far as electric. This building now does. The Borough was done. And to some extent, the IGO does, because it was rehabbed in '94. There's a few things we can still do in the IGO. They looked at the Taylor. The Taylor was retrofitted somewhat back many years ago. So there's a few things we can do at the Taylor. It's not huge savings, but anything we can do to reduce our energy costs is well worth the investment. So.
Do you have a timeline, Paul, as to when you're going to have a draft ready for the school committee to review?
No. But I realize it has to be sooner than later. So.
And we scheduled, I believe, June 12th. We scheduled June 12th to meet with the selectmen so they can vote. There's a form that we're going to type up.
You'd expect it to be done before June 12th, then, obviously.
Well, we're going to go in and at least try to get their blessing for this proposal.
I would
So
think
we're
you'd
going to have
want to
to
come to the
draft
school
one.
committee first before you go and get their blessing, because I would presume they'd want to make sure the school committee is comfortable and voted on it first before they voted. So we ought to make sure that you've come to us and vetted it through us first before you go and ask them for their blessing.
Unless, of course, as chair, you would entertain a motion tonight that we give our blessing.
Well, the blessing...
Based on the task
Right.
evaluation, we
Right.
know.
I don't think, there's no doubt that the school committee has not endorsed the effort. What I'm talking about is we have to sign the document. And so if I were a selectman, I wouldn't want to sign the document till the school committee signed it, and therefore, I'd want us to see it before you're presenting that document to other people.
But I hear you, Larry, but just to clarify, the SOI, obviously, that would be correct, but don't we also need to provide certificates that both the school committee and the selectmen have approved moving forward to do an SOI and to submit?
Correct.
So
Yes.
it's actually 2 parts, is it not?
I'm not sure. I thought we just had to approve the SOI.
No. The school committee has to vote for this, to allow the superintendent to submit the SOI.
Okay.
Selectmen have to vote to allow the superintendent to submit an SOI, and then the town manager, school superintendent, and school committee chairman then sign a document to submit that would go with the submission.
But the way I interpret that, Paul, is that if we're going to vote to authorize the superintendent to submit it, then that means we want to see the actual document, we want to read the actual document, and that's what we want to approve, not the theoretical, it's okay to do it. And so that's what I'm asking, is when you're going to have the document for us to review and then approve that document as a committee, then take that document as well to the selectmen. So if you're scheduled to meet with them on June 12th, you said?
Yeah, we're on their agenda.
Okay, so you'd want to work backwards to get to us around the same time frame.
Yeah, I don't see that we'll have the SOI ready by June 12th.
So what were you going to present to the selectmen that you wanted them to approve?
What we've presented tonight with the hope that they would say, yes, go ahead.
All right, so the chairman of the Board of Selectmen is here. Mr. Thrasher?
I just was conversing here quietly with Andy.
You need to
You need to come up to the microphone if you would, please.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you for coming.
I was just talking to Andy. Are you looking for a signature? And what you say makes sense, Larry. If you're looking for a formal signature on a formal document that your committee hasn't approved, then if you're looking for us to approve what you're doing, I agree that it makes more sense to put it in front of your committee, and then your committee puts it in front of us saying, we've already studied this, and this is what we're going to do.
Correct.
I didn't understand the procedure until you brought it up.
Right. Now, the key, from my viewpoint, Paul, is the reason why I wanted the selectmen to come this evening, if they could, is so that they could hear this $13 million request. They could understand what are the issues, what are the components, et cetera. I would not ask the selectmen this evening to tell us whether they think that this has merit or not. So I'm not opposed to you going to their meeting in June and discussing it and finding their merit. But obviously, the document that has to be prepared that we have to approve, I would think we would want to see it first. We'd want to approve it. Then it would go to them for their formal vote. Now, obviously, if you want to, on the 12th, find out if the selectmen would say to you on the 12th, I don't care what the document looks like, we're not going to support it, well, then that'd be important to know. But we've had such a relationship with the selectmen. They came, they toured the community, et cetera. If any of them have a concern this evening with that, hopefully they would speak up and we'd know that. But I think it is important, since it has to be done in July, that the actual document be prepared, be reviewed by the school committee, and that document go to the selectmen with ample time for them to review it after we've approved it. And then with any questions that they would have, we should be available to answer their questions, not just the administration.
In light of, I did have a question, Jay. What is the deadline for the submission to the State House?
July 31st.
31st of July. And is it accurate that it's not first come, first serve?
Yes.
Right.
Based on
It's when they're all there, then they're going to sort through for the next cycle.
I would expect, what I understood that the committee was looking for was an endorsement by the Board of Selectmen relative to our submission to the state for reimbursement for high school or educational-related infrastructure repairs.
Correct.
I would expect that our board would support that in principle,
Right.
that once our board is then charged with recommending an expenditure of town money, it's a more difficult question.
Correct.
But I know that we have in the past endorsed proposals to seek state money before we've committed to spend town money.
And that's really what this is a
That's what-
proposal to
yeah.
seek assistance from the state. If, in fact, the state came back in a year and said no, then we'd be back to the drawing board, meeting with the selectmen, saying, okay, so what's the next course of action for us as a community?
I'm wondering, though, Paul, that I see your total project, and this is in 2010 dollars. Is that accurate, Mike? 2010. Is the program with the state designed in any way to come back to us and say, we're not going to fund this big program, but we'll fund 50% of this program, so cut 50% of what you want, and we'll reimburse you 75% of
I
that?
don't think you'll know that until you submit it, Jim.
We don't know that yet.
No.
It's a whole new process since they've changed, they've reorganized.
It wouldn't be unusual, though, Jay.
I wouldn't be fair to comment.
Because they
I
haven't
don't
done
know.
it yet, how do you know?
Yeah, they got $500 million to spend per year.
So we want to take it one step at a time. The first step is to submit it, find out whether the state has an interest in working with us or not. If they don't, well, then we as a community have to sit back and think about this high school and the repairs that are coming down the road, and whether or not we can build the right case for the taxpayer to fund it if the state's not going to fund it.
I think about this, your committee would think about this. If you're already scheduled to come in on the 12th, there's no reason why Mike and Paul can't come in and educate
Right.
the Board of
Correct.
Selectmen
Correct.
and entertain questions.
Yep.
And then, if you guys wouldn't mind coming back, reporting to the school committee what concerns are raised.
Right.
We'll wait for you to look at the application, sign off on the application, and send it back. We have time to do that.
Correct.
And we meet again the 26th, I think, of this month. So if it can be done before then, we can put it on for a formal signature on that date, so we use the 12th as information.
Right.
Does that
And
make
we have a
sense?
meeting in July, and do you have a meeting in July as well?
We'll have two, we should have 2 meetings in
All right,
July.
so even if it needed to be done in July, we have a meeting, you'll have a meeting, we can still get it done and meet the July 31st timeline.
Sure. I'm sure the preference would be not to go to the last week of
That's
July.
correct.
We want to give you some time to
Correct.
get it in there.
I think it would make more sense to come to you now and give you this presentation, and then come back for the approval, give you some time to digest it.
I think that's a good idea. That's all right with our agenda, Andy, right? Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from school committee members?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Go ahead.
One of the things that surprised me, and Mike, it's the prioritized list. It is exactly what we've been saying for a number of years, what we had in our capital plan. But what concerns me the most is the asbestos abatement and removal. We've done a great job in our elementary schools. We know we need this, but according to the experts, and the largest chunk of this almost $13 million is almost $5 million in asbestos abatement. Is that what you would have put as our number one?
The reason it went to number 1 is when we start doing mechanical work and so on, we've got to get above the ceilings. You start getting above the ceilings and start disturbing this,
So that will
now you
help us
create
with
a
our health
problem.
and safety.
Exactly. So for the safety of the workers who are going to come in and do the work, obviously our students and teachers and so on, it's best to abate it first. Believe me, I would like to spend that last.
So we may,
But-
when we need to educate the selectmen that we don't necessarily have a choice of that not being number one. So almost $7 million, which we hadn't really necessarily anticipated because we were looking at the roof, the windows, the control systems, the new ventilators. So that's very significant.
I mean, that's the reason it went to number 1, is we have to abate it so we can get above the seal and do all the mechanical work and so on and so
So
forth.
it really is that health and safety issue.
And it's
Now,
4.7 million for the record. For the asbestos.
4.7. To me, that's
4.7.
pretty close to $5 million.
Like, isn't
So-
the reason we've
I thought you
never
said
had to
7, I'm
address
sorry.
it is because we've never approached this area. We've
Yes,
never gotten into it, so we never had to address
Exactly.
it.
We've never done that much work. We've done no remodeling, per se, above the ceilings and so on. And again, it's not throughout the whole school. It's only in selected areas, some of the support beams and so on. So again, it's not every room. I mean, we've gone in and done work in rooms, and there's no asbestos present whatsoever. So it's only selected areas in the school, but then we can't segregate those to do work. We just have to abate everything.
So that becomes critical and key.
Right.
My other question is on the accreditation, since that's also one of the statutory criteria. A big concern for us, and what started this over the last several years, has been our science rooms. In a year when $2 million got cut, we couldn't even think of putting any capital towards it. And each year, it's been even when we got a little bit, it's so overwhelming a task we haven't been able to get to it. But our accreditation, and we have been cited. There is an issue on our science rooms are not only inadequate, they are not sufficient. So did McGuire Group take into the account that could, because that didn't fall, that fell third from the bottom, or fourth from the bottom of the prioritized list.
I think had we lost accreditation,
Then it would have
it would have moved up.
Well, my
to number
question
2.
is, so we can relay the importance of that to the selectmen. Where are we? They tentatively said we'll work in partnership, and we have the 2 and the 3-year reports in, but how long is NEAS going to wait? Because it's already been, 5 years?
Well, I think,
And we'll be coming up soon for accreditation within the window.
I think if it becomes a problem, we automatically move it up. So, we ask the architects to come in and give us their best guess. So where there were no accreditation issues per se, we did not lose accreditation. They took them in priority of what they felt should be done first and your best payback. So, windows would give you a good payback. Obviously, the asbestos removal isn't going to be a payback, but we can't do anything else till that's done.
Okay.
So then it went windows, and so we went with our best payback down the line.
Now, here's my only major concern. It's been a wing and a prayer and holding our breath for how many years have I racked you on that roof? So we do the asbestos. We continue to put all this money into new ceilings, and you've done a remarkable job with putting in new ceilings and lights in this building, but the roof is not fixed, and it's already starting to leak. If we can't get to that, I'm very concerned that that's third on the list, and we're spending money, and, I mean, if the, literally every year, and you're up there twice a year to inspect. We've had more leaks this year, and we had a mild winter. What happens, okay, I mean, look what happened to Mansfield Public School System. It took them years to get $1 million appropriated for the roof. When they went to do it, it cost them $2.5 million. What happens if we now, according to this prioritized list, are outlaying $5-6 million before we can even get to spend another $3 million on a roof, and we have a roof failure?
Well,
That won't sit well with our taxpayers or any of us.
no, this is their best guess. We can put anything we want as priority one. I mean, the roof can be done before asbestos removal, because they're not above the ceilings, et cetera. So, if the roof became an issue, we could replace it next year, number one, no problem, if we could come up with $2.5 million. So, that's
know
their
you check
best
that
guess.
regularly
I
for
mean,
us.
what they're saying is, looking at the membrane and so on, we can get 3 or 4 years
But if we have
out of the
to-
roof, all right? But we're going to have to do maintenance on it. We're going to have to fix seams, we're going to have to do flashing, and we do, we chase it. I mean,
I know.
unfortunately, a leak shows up, we go up, we find it, we patch it, replace the stain tile, and move on.
You've done a remarkable job.
Well, we're
You
going to
kept
keep...
going for
We're
us.
going to keep doing that until we get to the point where we say, look, the membrane's gone, now we need a new roof. And that may be 3 years from now. I can't tell you exactly how long, but we could probably get 3 years out of this roof. We could move it to number one without doing the asbestos removal. So,
Thank you.
It sounds like a lot of your concerns, though, Kate, are based upon if this does not happen. If we, submit the statement of interest, then we need to go to Plan B, Plan C, whatever, in terms of re-examining what our priorities are. So it
Exactly,
seems like
what
the first
funds are
step is
available.
that that's not going to impact right now what our statement of interest is.
No, obviously,
At
as you
this particular
said,
time.
we're trying to build the case to the voter now. So when they hear about the 35-year-old high school and the heating and air conditioning, they know it didn't just come up at the last minute. It wasn't something that wasn't well thought out. We've had several meetings on it. We did a cable show on it where people were able to see and hear. We did the visit of the schools. So this is a planned process to work through and convince the voter that we're doing everything we can, A, to maintain it in the best condition, B, to get the money from the state, and C, go to the taxpayer as a last resort.
Well, a couple of things. We can't ever allow this building to become the disaster that they're in. And if nothing else, that should raise a red flag. And for us to keep putting it off and putting it off, it's just going to cost us more and more. I have some real concerns with the science lab in that I think there's some significant safety issues there. When you look at what's not functioning and that we're not complying with things. I have to tell you, the day that we were up here and we stood in that room, I had visions of Little House on the Prairie, and a little fire at the end trying to keep that room warm, and a teacher standing up there with the fingers cut off of gloves in order to keep warm to teach, and with a scarf around his neck. It's incredible. We have inside rooms that that are so hot they can't stand them. So we go from, a Caribbean beach to Iceland, and that's not conducive to learning, especially when you're trying to promote math and science and what we want to do. I can't imagine, Mike, sitting in those classrooms and trying to study.
Neither can I.
I think you would have to, I don't know how you can learn. I really don't. And I think people have to understand that this has got to be done. One way or another, it's got to be done.
Katie, do you have anything else? Bevy? Anybody in the audience want to make any other comments on this topic?
Mr. Harrington, it's important for me to tell you that we do have a member of Representative Barrow's office here with us this evening. So I'd like you to at least acknowledge him, give him an opportunity to speak.
You mean Senator Timothy's office?
Excuse
We
me.
announced him earlier.
Excuse me, yes.
Yes.
Would you care to speak before we close the subject?
You can come up to the microphone if you would, please.
Those who I haven't met, I'm Tim O'Neill. I'm Senator Jim Timothy's Chief of Staff. I apologize, and Representative Barrett has seen me like this before. I am not the public speaker to my boss or the representative. I'm usually very nervous speaking in large groups and especially on camera. But the concerns that were raised today, particularly revolving around Foxborough's diligence and due diligence in maintaining the high school have been raised to the members of the school building authority in meetings over the past several years as they were developing their regulations. And I do know that Catherine Craven, the executive director, is particularly concerned with not punishing those communities who have, on their own, through their own initiative, maintained their facilities. The goal of the school building assistance legislation was not to just take the worst schools and build them up and then have more schools like Foxborough High just fall into disrepair just out of neglect from the state. The goal is to make sure that all of the schools are well maintained, are designed properly, that when we build new schools, they're done in such a way that the life expectancy of the building will be roughly 40 years. Foxborough has done a great job in maintaining the high school in comparison to many other communities. But I would not be, I wouldn't say it would be appropriate for Foxborough to worry that because they've done such a great job, they're going to be punished by the state. The capital maintenance projects that are being proposed are smart government spending. We have a community here that's trying to maintain its educational facilities without coming to the state saying we want to build a completely new high school. We want a huge scoreboard on in our gym and a pool, which is what some of the requests were before the moratorium was put in place. So the concerns that have been expressed today, we'll be bringing them to Catherine Craven and Treasurer Cahill, which oversees the school building authority, and Representative Barrows, who's done an excellent job since he's been in the building. We're very happy to have him, and Senator Timilty will continue to fight for the community, make sure that when you present your statement of interest, that we're there providing backup documents and doing whatever we can to assist the schools. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
By the way.
Great speech.
Well done.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Jay, thank you very much for your support as well. Dr. Owen, did you have anything else on the topic?
No, I just want to
All right.
make sure that everyone was acknowledged.
All right, the next item on our agenda is the Student Information System update. Mr. Bortolotti. Our thanks also to the Selectmen for joining us this evening.
Yes, thank you.
And the Town Manager.
You'll be hearing from us.
Absolutely, I'll give you a call. Okay.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Nell.
thank you.
Wendy,
I don't know if the two of you want to do a little switch of the
nameplate.
nameplates, just if on keyboard.
Oh, what the
That
heck?
was a test to see if we were paying attention.
Who else wants the job? That was a test, ladies. That was a test.
This next item on the agenda is the Student Information System, and it was suggested that we take a 10 or 15-minute overview so that the public, as well as the school committee, understands what's involved in implementing the new student information system, as well as some of the features that will be turned on initially and some of the features down the road that will be very helpful to the school system. So, Mr. Bortolotti, do you want to kick this off?
Okay, thanks for having me this evening. I will attempt to be brief. In fact, I will be brief.
Thank you.
How's that sound? As soon as I can find my presentation. Just basically going to run quickly through a brief background as to where we are and why we had to make a decision, make a change, what the search process was. Oops, let's go back. Previous. The selection criteria we used, the features that we were looking for, and then we'll talk specifically about the implementation we have in front of us, the timeline at a very high level at this particular time, and when we expect to go live with our new student information system. Currently, we're using Century's Consultant Star Student 6. Its support ends June 30th of this year. Oracle, the software vendor for the database structure that underlies the current student information system, is pulling the support on the current version that we have. Have been experiencing problematic performance since I've come on board. There's been a very high level of required maintenance, a very high level of user dissatisfaction, inconsistent practices with respect to how we keep our data, how we provide grades. We're not consistent from school level from school to school, from level to level, and throughout the district. And in order to upgrade our current system, it would require a new purchase. So the decision was made to look at the current market and determine the best fit. This was an 11-month search. Basic fact-finding in terms of looking at companies and their organization structure, their reputation among Massachusetts K-12 institutions with student information systems, their focus on student information systems. Many companies make a variety of different types of software. I wanted to try to focus this search on companies that's their specialty. The application's technical components, the ability to provide service and support. And through this search, 3 companies were selected for product demonstrations. The selection criteria used in looking at the product demonstrations were the overall ease of use and robust functionality in terms of storing and reporting your student demographic data, the ability to track and report attendance, recording and reporting grades. We wanted something with a powerful scheduler in terms of our needs at the middle and high schools, and something that's going to provide minimum maintenance. Also, we were looking for something that was going to give us browser-based access of the product. Our choice was Pearson School Systems Power School. The company was founded in '96. This product has been web-based since its inception. Many companies today have converted to web-based. This company's been that from the get-go. And as I indicated, they're a division of Pearson School Systems. Previously, this product was owned by Apple Computer. Their success is based on 3+ million students tracked. Their system is deployed, according to them, in more than 7,300 schools across the country. And it's been a CODI Award winner for 3 years running. CODI is an award provided by the SIIA, which is the Software Information Industry Association. And basically, CODI is a term from the word code, which is a techie term which we use to refer to software all the time. We're talking about the code. So that's what a CODI is. In terms of the way the company is organized, they're very strong in terms of their backing of student information. They have a strong development team, implementation team, which is going to help us tremendously. They're very strong in the state reporting, which they have across the country. They have 50 states to satisfy. Their customer support, although they're located on the West Coast, they run their customer support. They get up at 4 a.m. California time. So they're there to answer the phone at 7 o'clock Eastern time. That was very important. And as far as the report writing, which has been a problem in our current system, we will be able to customize reports and get information out of our system. The features, it provides the user-friendly interface that I talked about, the attendance and tracking and reporting, a feature-rich grade book, sophisticated scheduling, built-in reports, state reports. It is web-based and it is customizable. There are over 60 Massachusetts school districts that use PowerSchool. And as far as the listing that I just quickly came up of here, I think I've got 16 or so. There are some close to us in terms of Dedham. You'll see Sharon listed, Millis listed, Tri-County Regional Vocational Technical High School, which is in Sharon. Wellesley is also listed, and there are many, many more. I believe the count was up to about 130 if they include individual private institutions. So, but as a district, the count they gave me is somewhere over 60. So we're not going to be alone in this product. There's a very strong user group, locally based, that will assist us in this project. In terms of implementation, obviously we have to plan the project. We need to prepare the infrastructure. We need to do a thorough business review in terms of our current practices. What should we keep doing? What do we need to change? This is a perfect opportunity to do that, although not 100% necessary in terms of the immediate rollout. We'll need to configure the product according to that business review. We'll then have to, before we import the data, we'll have to export our current data. Then we will import that data and validate. We will also have to train. And then we'll be able to go live. As far as planning the project, basically we took a type of a virtual committee was set up amongst these particular groups in terms of the public school administration, the elementary schools, the special education department, Foxborough High School, the Ahern Middle School, and the technology group, with all those different groups reporting into technology and then technology then interfacing with the PowerSchool implementation team.
Paul, do you ever, in a project like this, put out an invitation to a couple of citizens at large who may be experts in software development or have other kinds of experience that could be relevant from an advice and consulting standpoint, or do you just use school employees?
It's been my habit to work with just school employees at this, and that's what I'm looking for in terms of this project, in terms of the consistency that may offer. However, I would be open to
It just seems
that
to me
suggestion.
that when you look at the wealth of this community and the experience people have, there could be, I don't know, but there could be people with quite a lot of experience that could be helpful as a member of the team. And maybe you could put out a request and nobody will sign up for it. But I do think that often if we look within ourselves, then we have the same kind of a mindset. And sometimes having someone who doesn't think the way everybody else does as part of the team opens up the thinking and opens up the aperture so that maybe we think a little bit differently about it. So I would just think that you might want to just, Paul, you and Paul Square, think about the advantages and disadvantages of just seeing whether or not there are some people out there in the community with expertise that could add value. The other side benefit is that it gets other people in the community involved, potentially that aren't as involved in the schools, which helps them see the value that we're adding every day, and they're helping out advocating at town meeting or at other kinds of times of the year, like when we might have a request for a high school improvement process, et cetera. So just something to think about.
Well, I think the issue you're raising is larger, Larry, in terms of wouldn't be just apply to student information, but it could apply to technology
in general,
in whole. And I do have at some point a plan to sit down and think in terms of public involvement in technology in Foxborough and what we need to do.
Okay, good, thank you. I think it'd be very helpful.
As far as the very high-level timeline, we've spent the month of May planning the project. Obviously, planning the project will go throughout the project, as is true for a lot of these pieces that are listed here. And the initial plans, again, were that my group, one particular individual, met with those different areas that I had just indicated on the previous slide, asking questions. It would have been nice to meet in all one group, but people's time being challenged, that was difficult. We made sure that we were as consistent as possible. I then was briefed by my staff member, and then any questions I had, she returned, or I followed up with a building administrator or a member of one of these particular groups to make sure that we were on the right track. In the month of June, as we're just starting, we need to prepare the infrastructure. The first piece of that is buying the hardware that's going to support the student information system. We'll be buying a fairly robust server and technology associated with it, and pretty much will be the latest in terms of what's out there in the marketplace. Another piece of preparing the infrastructure, which will be very helpful and critical, will be any network upgrades that come by the way of the town project in terms of upgrading our existing building-to-building communications. We also will then enter into a detailed business review. Power School has an exceptional template in terms of this project and how it's managed, and they have two documents that will focus, one on the district in terms of district information and practices, and then another document that will be a school-by-school document in terms of how schools' needs must be met and what they're currently doing, and so on and so forth. We'll also begin to test our ability to export data from our current system. One major hurdle I see in this project is the fact that we're losing support on our current system. And I'm going to enter into discussions with that vendor in terms of how I can continue support for that product through the next school year. Their present business practice is to have submitted invoices to schools, expecting schools to upgrade and then provide support as normal. That won't be the case for Foxborough. We are not going to spend the money to upgrade a system that we're going to no longer use. So, again, I see that as a challenge, so I want to begin that testing immediately to see if we're going to have any snags and try to work it out under our current maintenance agreement with our present vendor. As we enter into July, we hope to begin some training sessions. We are going to use a train-the-trainer model where we're going to try to find key individuals throughout the district and have them trained and then have them train others where that's appropriate. Those that will be trained initially will be members of my staff and will be the members that would be Power School administrators. And a Power School administrator is not a building principal. A Power School administrator would be a building secretary, a member of guidance, perhaps either an assistant principal or someone else, people that work in the product every day in terms of entering data, doing schedules, and whatnot. Those will be our focus areas in terms of training, and with people's work schedules during the summer, I'm going to begin immediately trying to ascertain what times are going to be available. The training needs to be done in a timely fashion. It also needs to be done when we have a system and our own product up and running, so that there's no time lag, so that the training goes to waste. We'll then focus on the Power School setup. We will then export our data, do a final data export, and then import and validate our current data. The month of August will then be spent as well with additional training, and most likely, as I've made some discussions with administrators concerning professional development time, we're hoping that we have the time for the teachers in terms of their piece with attendance and grades to begin passing on that information and having them comfortable to get that pieces of the system up and running, so that in September 4th of next year, Power School will go live.
Paul, do you feel comfortable that you have adequate resources today to do this successfully?
I have adequate resources. The question will be getting access to those resources that the buildings will need. That's where the challenge is going to be.
You have a commitment from each of the building principals.
I've had an early commitment. I now need to revisit that commitment and follow up to make sure that we have it.
Okay.
And work out and then work out any compromises and hurdles that we run into in that area.
Because I think it'll be important, at least for the school committee, because we've talked about this new system now for 2 years, that over the summer, I'd like for our July and August meeting to take a few minutes on that agenda and get an update with how it's going. So if there are any problems, that we're aware of it. Don't want to get to the start of school and find out that the system's not going to be up and running as you thought. So if you're going to need additional help or resources or consulting or whatever it might be, I want to make sure the school committee's aware of it and we can give you the support you need to make sure this is a success. So Paul, if you would make sure that gets on the agenda, or Wendy, if you'd make sure it gets on the agenda for July and August, just a brief update with how it's going.
Okay. And what Power School going live on September 4th means is that, and you might think of this as a phase one because Power School has a lot more capabilities than what I'm indicating here, but as far as managing student data, that will be done consistently district-wide with Power School. Attendance tracking and reporting will be done consistently district-wide via Power School, and then grades and report cards will be done via the Power Grade tool in Power School for the high school and the middle school.
And do you want to explain why not in the elementary levels?
The reason being is I think that having two schools take on an electronic grade book, both schools of which have some familiarity with an electronic grade book, will be more chances of more success than if we try to roll it out in the 3 elementary schools where we're presently using an Excel spreadsheet. Granted, that's electronic, but it's not system-wide. It's not a systematic electronic feature.
Is it your intention, though, to put those schools on at some point?
Yes. As I go to my next slide in terms of Power School for the future, and I would expect no later than September of the following school year that elementary grades and report cards are rolled out, and then any additional functionality in terms of items such as parent and student access, and I see that I have a spelling error. Thank you very much. I did so well, too. I did so well. That item in particular, a very powerful and exciting component of the student information system where not only teachers and administrators will have access to student information, but parents, the public at large, even students will have access to data through a web interface. And we're looking forward to that day. However, I caution those that are focusing on that functionality that it's, I think, very prudent that our district and administrators, staff, Power School administrators become extremely and fully comfortable with the new product before we embark on a project such as that. Questions?
Can I just add one thing, Larry, too?
Sure, if you come up to the microphone.
Paul, don't move. I just wanted to say that also, Paul and I have discussed that the difference also is at the elementary schools, we have a standards-based report card, where at the middle school and the high school, it's more of an averaging that just goes into the system. So that's why it's another reason why it's going to take us a little longer. So.
Good.
Thank you, Michelle.
Questions from the committee? Beverly, you have any questions?
This is the same system that will tie in with the town system, correct? No?
No.
Okay.
That's
Oh,
a
the
financial,
accounting-
that's a
thank
financial
you.
piece.
Thank you.
Yep, no, this is a separate system. Katie?
Oh, very impressive.
Kate?
Oh, you asked my question already.
Martha?
Looks good.
Excellent. Anybody from the audience have any questions for Mr. Bortolotti on the student information system? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate you coming this evening. You're quite welcome. Mr. Jackson, do you want to take the discussion of the surplus, the budget, and the revolving accounts kind of together, or do you want them separated as they are on the agenda?
I think I'd rather do it all
Together?
together, yes.
Makes sense to me to do them together. All right. Go ahead, sir.
I didn't know if you wanted to do the elementary school improvement plans first, in case people didn't want to stay for this, but if you'd like to...
If we have all the people that need to be here, because it's not 9 o'clock yet, I don't want someone to miss out that planned on being here. For Borough, Ms. McCarthy, do you have anyone, you have everyone that you planned on coming tonight with you?
I have everyone that needs to be in.
All right, then why don't you go first then, and we'll defer Paul until
Well,
after
all
that.
three are going to come at
At the same time? Okay.
We're going to start together.
Okay.
You can bring up the chairs.
Karen Salzman is not here this evening because, I don't know, she decided it was more important to attend her son's graduation from Princeton.
Oh, congratulations.
So
Good for
Dr.
her.
Lardy is going to take on the I Go All By Yourself.
Okay.
That's good. I guess we just wanted to open by thanking you for giving us the opportunity to come and share with you our school improvement plans, our proposed plans for the 2007, 2008, and 2008-2009 school year. Before we begin and each of us take a chance to go through some of our target goals, I wanted to highlight for the committee some changes to the format and to the scope of the individual school improvement plans that you'll see as you review each plan this year. Back in the fall, the school committee did vote to approve a new strategic plan, and that plan outlines 4 core values for the Foxborough Public School District. The 4 core values form the acronym CARE and stand for C for challenging, innovative educational experiences, A for a safe and supportive environment, R for respect for the dignity and diversity of individuals and cultures, and E for ensuring a quality education through ongoing communication and shared resources. What you'll notice is that each of our school improvement plans has developed an action plan to support us in improving our performance under each of the core values that have been established. In addition, you'll notice that the bulk of the school improvement plans address the first core value, which is in improving and strengthening our academic programs. The objectives within each of the action plans are based on a thorough analysis of the MCAS data, as well as the Terra Nova and other informal measures, such as our local benchmark tests. You'll also notice in reading the plans that they're much more specific this year than they have been in the past at identifying specific and quantifiable goals, and in outlining how they'll be measured and assessed and what our desired level of performance is for each. You will also see that prior to the statement of each of the academic goals, there's an analysis of the root causes, and you'll see that those are numbered in your plans. So we've identified 3 root causes that we feel are contributing to student underperformance in each of the academic areas. And then within the instructional change objectives, the student learning objectives, and the strategies, those numbers should align with the root causes. So we built our plans around where we feel the gaps and the weaknesses are. Additionally, another change is that we're presenting plans tonight that are 2-year school improvement plans. We will be coming back to the committee, I anticipate, next year to update you as to the status of each of the initiatives. And we may need to make some minor adjustments to the plans as the data indicates. But that we will be remaining on the focusing on the targeted areas that are indicated in each of the plans for 2 years. Finally, I wanted to mention that all the individual school improvement plans are fully aligned with the district improvement plan. While the district improvement plan that we looked at the last committee meeting identifies some broad areas of focus, each of the school improvement plans takes those objectives and breaks it down more specifically to how that will be addressed at the building level.
For,
Nope, go ahead. Michelle's going to give you an overview of how the process has changed before we all speak.
for the first goal, for goal number 1, to support educational experiences that promote academic excellence, the process for establishing the target areas at each of the buildings was similar. As Ingrid said, it was a lengthy process. We began in the fall using the data from MCAS, Terra Nova, and teacher assessments to identify the areas of weakness in each of 3 categories: math, ELA, and test-taking strategies. Once the target areas were identified, teachers spent time at both grade level and staff meetings identifying first the root causes and then later developing instructional change objectives, student learning objectives, and strategies in each of the identified areas. The assessment schedule and instruments were also discussed at this time. Drafts were then brought forward and fine-tuned several times with the school councils at each of the buildings, making final adjustments.
Right, then in the latter part of the school improvement plan, each school committee, each school council member gathered information from the constituents on the non-academic goals, which were communication, collaboration, respect, and environment. And as Ingrid mentioned, they were also aligned with the DIP. This information was communicated to the school council members by either PTO meetings, staff meetings, or we surveyed, some of the schools surveyed the students, the staff, and the parents to see what their concerns were, or if they had any issues. Then the school council parents and the staff members on the school council used this feedback and worked on the target areas under each of the non-academic goals. And then the principals, as they give their plans tonight, will briefly highlight them.
Okay. We're going to let Michelle present first. Is there any questions on format or process that we should answer before we go into the individual school plans?
No, why don't you just go ahead.
Okay, we'll let Michelle go first. And we did, just so that you know, recognize that we only have 20 minutes tonight. So we designed our plans and presentations accordingly, but would certainly be happy to answer any questions that you have following the presentations.
I think I had one parent who came to me, or maybe he left me, I don't know.
He's actually right up in the
Oh, is he? Well, that's okay. Oh, here he comes. Steve, you want to come up and sit with me?
Sure.
While Steve's coming up, I just want to thank all of my school council members, Steve Uden, Joni Block, and Maria Kerrigan were the parent representatives. Evie Mom was our community rep, and Courtney Clements and Karen Washburn were the staff members on the council. Again, as Ingrid said, there's a lot of information in the plans that you received, so I'm just going to highlight some of the areas. Under goal number 1 and the academics, the borough identified 2 target areas in math, and those were measurement and basic computation. As you know, we will be implementing the Think Math program next year, and teachers this week actually are already starting to participate in professional development for that program, and we're excited, particularly with the homeschool and writing connections in the program, because it goes along with some of the instructional change objectives and strategies that we have in place. We identified 1 test-taking target area, and that was to improve our open response scores. At the borough, over the past 3 years, our scores in open response have been inconsistent, and our objective is to use both the new Think Math and the new Harcourt Trophies program to incorporate open response questions into daily instruction and assessments, so we're providing students with more practice in planning and organizing their writing. And finally, our target areas for ELA were word knowledge and usage and understanding text. The Harcourt Trophies program this year has allowed us to increase the amount of vocabulary instruction as well as the explicit instruction of strategies such as drawing conclusions and making inferences. And finally, you'll see throughout the academic portion of the school improvement plan that we are establishing next year teacher collaboration time twice per month. This will allow grade level teams an opportunity to examine student work and develop lessons that address areas of weakness. And we will be working with the directors on that also. For the non-academic goals, 2 through 4, we have also identified target areas. Under goal number 2, we have 2 target areas. One is to maintain and enhance the aesthetics of the school. Steve was part of the team that traveled to all the buildings that day. I believe Mike O'Leary has already mentioned at another school committee meeting our improving our reception area as well as tinting the windows in our cafeteria. Also, with the PTO, we have been exploring various landscaping options in addition to Rosie's Garden, looking at grants for the area between the main parking lot and the building, as well as continuing to look at fundraising options for the playground equipment. And the second target area was to coordinate the school safety plan with the district and town-wide safety plans. Under goal number 3, our targets were to align the CARE program, which has been our character education program for the past 2.5 years, with the new guidance curriculum, and to promote connections between the borough and the wider community. In this area, we are particularly looking at expanding our Each One Reach One program, which had sort of dwindled, but we are working again to build that up, and our connection with the Senior Citizen Center. And finally, under goal number 4, the target area here is to enhance our website. And if you haven't noticed, over these past several months, we've completely revamped the borough web page, and I want to specifically thank Steve and Maria Kerrigan for their work on that. Paul Bordolati, I know at an earlier meeting, is making this a district goal to update all the web pages, but he's worked with us this year so that when that happens district-wide, I think that the tech department will have a better idea of really what our goal is for the borough page and what kinds of information we want to share on that page. So, and
we've certainly made a lot of progress in the last 12 months in the technology area, haven't we?
Yeah.
Across the district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Steve would volunteer to be on the calls committee too. They've worked already on the
nothing's
webpage,
crashed.
So.
So
yeah.
that's
Questions from the committee? Martha?
Just a comment. This being my 10th year on this committee, I have to commend all 3 of the schools in the presentations that they've brought forward tonight. They're probably the most detailed, the most comprehensive reports I've ever seen. And I think you've risen to the challenge. You have identified the areas of concern where you need to address things, and I'm very impressed with what you've all done. It took a lot of time to read through this, and I can honestly tell you, sometimes I don't think I can drink any more tea than I possibly do, but I was very impressed. At first, when I picked them up, I went, wow, the weight of them. But the content is incredible. I think you've identified and spent a lot of time.
It was a lot of time. I have to say to the entire staff. I mean, not just the school council who spent a lot of time on, but the entire staff. And I think, for each of our buildings, the amount of hours that went into it.
But I think the honesty in every one of these reports, and the way you presented your concerns and how you hope to meet those expectations and how you hope to turn things around. I think for anybody who has the time and the energy to read through these, you really should read them. Every parent in the school system should sit down and read these because they're very impressive.
And it will be up on the website, too, once it's approved.
I think it would behoove everybody to look at it because obviously everybody's doing their job.
It really ties into the district improvement
It
plan very well.
absolutely does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But also, and thank you very much for the reformatting of the presentation of it. It makes it very logical, very readable, very understandable.
Good.
There was a lot of work in reformatting all of that, too.
And this is actually your second year. I'm just curious. Did you find it got easier? Because you actually started with this format last year.
Well, last year the borough did start using. We aligned with the goals, the district goals, but we didn't include all the information of how we were going to assess, and that really, was a huge part of the thought process this year too.
And we didn't give you much time, I know. So, again, you and the parents did a wonderful job.
Yeah, it was. We were pretty much on target. We were ready to go. So.
Kate, anything else from you?
I have one other concern.
1 second, Martha. Kate, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Okay, go ahead, Martha.
When I look at all of these improvement plans, and I know this is at the end of every one of the plans, when you talk about your playgrounds and your fundraising and stuff, I really would like the committee to kind of look at our surplus money. We put a huge responsibility on our PTOs when it comes to these type of things, and these are huge money objectives that they set up for themselves when they're trying to raise $50,000. It's the same thing when you're trying to buy a piano for the high school and it's $20,000. I think, you know, if we have money in our surplus, I think we have to look to some of these areas. I'm very concerned about safety. And what our liability is as a town if we allow some of the playground areas to deteriorate and to wait for money to be raised. I think it's something we need to address ourselves and put some money into it, you know, and rise to the challenge along with the PTOs. I think it's a huge responsibility to put that kind of a money cost on the PTOs. And I'm concerned about off-school time and parents bringing their kids to some of these playgrounds. And I think we have to be a little bit more cognizant of what our responsibility is as a town and our liability. You know, if we've got an area that's not up to snuff, we can't just wait for them to raise the money. We have to jump in and help.
That's true. You know, thank you with the playgrounds particularly. Also, I just want the committee to know that we did apply for a Lowe's grant too for some landscaping this year, and we were denied, but we'll try again, you know, next year. So that's another opportunity. I think we have to, you know, if we've got some money left over, I think we need to address these as a committee, and I hope we'll consider it.
Katie, did you want to add anything?
No, I want to agree with what you said, Martha. I think that's a very important issue to discuss. I was very impressed with the school improvement plans as well. I think that for anyone looking to find out exactly what we're trying to target when it comes to curriculum, this is very valuable information. One of the questions that I did have as I was going through all three of them was how certain number of minutes came about. How was it decided that the time would be increased by 5 minutes or 60 minutes?
I don't know if there was.
Well, there was one. Yeah, there was on page 7. I know it's probably being picky, but I'm just wondering how that comes about, like with the math class. All students will receive at least 60 minutes.
Time on learning is 60 minutes for the math, and that's actually been our goal, you know, all along.
Is it something that we've been doing?
I think that we've been doing 60 minutes. I think that we are trying to find ways that not just within the 60 minutes of the math block, but also incorporating some of that into the homeschool connection, into our morning work, into just the day, you know, into some of the other subject areas too, which I think, again, the Think Math program is really going to be valuable for that also.
Thank you.
What I would like to add is that what we have tried hard in the last year is to make things as transparent as possible. And so honestly sharing with parents where our problems are. We did it in the district improvement plan. We've done it here. The only way we're going to build consensus in the community to provide adequate funding to the schools, whether it be for operational issues or for capital issues, is for the parents to, A, know what we're doing, why we're doing it, where our problems are, and the fact that we're being open and honest with plans to address them. And by having the parents involved, as you have here, it helps with additional advocates out in the community who can clearly advocate for where we're falling short in delivering the needs that we have to our students, whether it be on a playground or whether it be in math or ELA, whatever. And you know, we've been fortunate in the last 2 years that the town has approved the budget without a question. And they approved the capital budget without a question. And I think that comes from building a reputation over time of being candid, being direct, being honest. And we've got some big things ahead of us. We finally were able to reinstate some positions that were cut a few years ago. But we're looking at some additional things we need to do in terms of curricula. We're looking at things in terms of capital for the high school. So it's very important that we build the community involvement and the community spirit, so when we need that support, that we know that we can count on them because they know what the real issues are that we're facing. And I think that these documents go a long way for not only those parents that are actively involved like yourself, but for other parents to see that we really are focusing on improving the quality of education in every aspect of what we do, We have quantifiable measures now that we haven't had before. We're going to have regular updates that we haven't had before, where you actually can see our goal was to go from 80 to 83. Did we or did we not? If we didn't, why didn't we? If we went to 85, what do we think helped us do better than we thought? And so real performance discussions going forward. And thank you to Dr. Norton for helping derive in the district improvement plans as well as here a real change in the district around performance. And I think what we've done in the last 12 months, what we're looking forward in the next 12 months is going to make a huge difference to the community. So I want to thank all the principals and all the folks that worked on these plans as well.
Thank you.
Just quickly, if I could, as the active parent sitting next to the principal, it was very refreshing and interesting to see as a parent not only the sort of surgical approach that was taken to this by Michelle, and I'm sure the other principals as well, but also the metal of what the people are made out of. They're very serious about what they're doing here and identifying it, and the accountability column won't go away.
Right.
Maybe the individual in that column might move around or something like that, but when the parents know that this information is out there, warts and all, or no warts,
right,
then we can just find the accountability here, and it's more than just reading the town annual report. It's the balance that these teachers and administrators have with the board and then with the taxpaying parents or citizens.
Well, there'll be a huge difference if in 5 years or sometime down the road there's another EQA audit here. The results will be significantly different than what we've had to date because of the effort you've put forth as the acting superintendent, all of our principals, really addressing the things we should have been doing for a long time that we didn't. We're doing those now. We'll have a report sometime in the next month or two for the community on the EQA, and they'll see exactly where the state thinks we did well and where we didn't do well. But what's encouraging, I want people at home to know, is that in most of those areas, Dr. Norton has assured me that we were not rated very highly in. There are action plans in virtually every one of those. Some have already been addressed. Others are in the process of being addressed. They're covered in the DIP. They're covered in the SIP. So again, I want the voter, I want the taxpayer, I want the parent to know that we're taking this criticism very seriously from the parents, from the state, from every source, putting it forward to the public and putting plans in place with accountability at the school committee level, at the superintendent level, at the principal level as we go forward. And I think that's going to help build additional credibility going forward.
Yeah, it's been real good as a parent to watch.
Excellent.
Really good.
All right. Ms. Naylor, are you next?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Michelle.
You could change
We
that.
can change that because it's tea. We don't want to throw her off. We've been changing lots of other things. We can change that.
That's right. Okay, let's hear it from Igo.
Okay. Well, good evening. I just want to introduce, this is Claudia O'Leary. She's the co-chair of the Igo School Council and a first grade teacher at the Igo. And before I present our plan, I just want to thank the parent representatives who served on the school council, Jennifer Morrison, Rosemary Kelleher, and Sally Shiverdecker, as well as the teacher representatives, Doreen Bentley and Claudia O'Leary, and our community representative, who's Mr. Thomas Earhart. Also Karen Salzman, my co-principal this year, who's not able to join us. As Michelle mentioned, I think what we hope to do tonight is to highlight what our primary areas of focus are, and to give you a global sense of what the school improvement plan encompasses. At the IGO, we have identified 2 target areas in the area of mathematics. I don't think either will come as a surprise to the committee, as you saw the Terra Nova presentations and the MCAS presentations that we provided earlier this year. The first area of focus is improving students' mathematics computation skills and their proficiency with basic math facts. The assessment data that we have to date indicates that that's an area of weakness for our students, and we do feel that that contributes to difficulty with higher level mathematics thinking as our students are getting bogged down in the process of computing. There's many instructional change objectives that we have outlined to address that area. As you know, we'll be implementing a new Think Math program next year. There is regular spiral review of math facts, as well as many opportunities for parent information and outreach to help parents understand how we're teaching children to approach math thinking. So a lot of that is outlined in the specifics under the instructional change objectives.
Could I suggest something, though?
Yeah.
just to show my own ignorance, if I look at page 5 and I look at the root causes, and I look at root cause number 2, if you were to ask me what a pedagogy was, I could not explain it to you. And I think there may be other parents at home, when you use terminology like that, that may not understand what it is. And so in order to make these as parent-friendly as possible, when you use terminology that you think there may be a fair number of people that might not understand that terminology, explaining it would be helpful for someone picking it up and reading it. Obviously, we can go to a dictionary. Obviously, we can look up the word. But you could make it easier for the reader if, in some cases like that, you would have put it either in simpler language or you would explain what it is.
Sure. Actually, I think that's an
I'm probably the
excellent-
only school committee member who doesn't know what it is. So.
No, I'll go over
I would
it, but I
have
actually
as
think
well.
that's a good suggestion. I think before we put all the plans up online, there's a lot of terms in here that are used, like the CPI index and things like that. We could definitely put together a definition of terms.
I just want to make it easy for, if we get a parent to be engaged enough to get the document online or a written copy like this, we want to make it as easy as possible.
Absolutely, we can do that. We can do a definition of terms.
Actually, if the newspaper was
regards-
still here, we could do a quiz this week and ask how many people read the Foxborough report and know what that means.
With regards to the pedagogy, though, that's the way we approach teaching a concept. So we've talked about with computation, beyond the algorithms, what other instructional approaches can we take to help kids better internalize math facts? That's what that refers to. The other area that we would like to target in mathematics is improving the students' skill with in the area of measurement, and that has to do with not just their ability to solve problems with measurement, but to convert units of measure, to be able to estimate and make reasonable estimates of distance, time, elapsed time, things like that. Those are areas of weakness, again, on both the Paranovas and the MCAS problems. One of the root causes you'll notice with that is we do feel there's gaps in the curriculum sequence in the area of measurement. A lot of that will be addressed with the implementation of the new program. There is a spiral review back, measurements incorporated throughout the year as opposed to just in an individual unit. We have this year the opportunity to purchase some additional measurement tools through an Invensis grant that we hope to have in place in the fall as well as the funding you approved for additional manipulators that will help us address that goal. Within the area of English language arts, we also have 2 target areas. Again, should not be a big surprise to the committee as they were target areas on both the Terra Nova and MCAS presentations as a district. The first is improving students' word knowledge. That includes their understanding of word meaning and vocabulary, as well as the identification of parts of speech. Again, we've identified for you the root causes that we feel most contribute to underperformance in that area. We will be in the second year of the implementation of the new Harcourt Trophies program. We are expecting to see some positive gains from the informal data that we have to date from classroom teachers. They feel that the vocabulary element of that program is very strong.
Definitely much stronger. In the phonics portion of the new reading program, I've seen a huge difference this year than I have in a long time.
Yeah, and that's fairly universal beyond just the first grade. We're hearing people at all the grade levels say that students are internalizing the vocabulary, they're using it in their writing, so we do feel that that's going to get us far in meeting our objectives.
See, that's another good reason. You know, you put a curriculum in place 8 or 10 years ago. Things change, ways to teach children change, and as a community we neglected that for a long time, and now we have a cycle, we've put funding behind that, and if we continue that kind of a commitment as new ways to learn come forward, we're able to update curriculum and help our students do better. So that's another area that I want the parents at home to understand. We've made tremendous strides in just a short 14 months in the ELA program, not only 1 through 6 now, but we approved the secondary level and we've approved the math program. So these are going to have a dramatic impact over the next couple years. It's spending additional dollars that we've been able to work through the budget, but absolutely critical dollars in order to improve the quality of the students' education.
Absolutely, as well as the consistency across the district. Our second goal under ELA is working on that inferential critical reasoning skills. I know that was an issue that we presented when we talked about the 7 to 12 ELA review, and it's clearly an issue that students entering the middle school are struggling with. Again, the Harcourt Trophies program has done a really nice job of incorporating more higher level thinking objectives, asking students to summarize, identify main idea, compare and contrast. Those are things that we're going to build on. Under some of the instructional change objectives, you'll notice we also felt that we need to incorporate more of those types of questions that require that type of reasoning across all assessments in all content areas to give children more practice with how to break down that kind of question, how to support and answer in a logical way. So that's another area for ELA. Our test taking, we identified one test taking objective. For the IGO, it's going to be working on improving our open response scores. Right now, if you look at the test taking goal page, I give you a breakdown. Our overall ELA open response averages from 2.28 to 2.75 out of a possible 4 points. We definitely feel our students can do better than that. Part of the issue when we look at actual student work is that students are answering only part of a question. They're not reading the question through to completion. They're not answering all aspects of the question. They're not organizing their responses, labeling answers. So with some explicit instruction and support in that area, we think we can see some real positive gains. And again, we've outlined a plan for how we're going to work towards that. I'd also like to highlight some of the non-academic goals. Again, and Claudia, please feel free to jump in.
About what page are we now?
27.
27. Thank you.
Yeah. The non-academic goals, again, align with the core values, the first being the safe, supportive, collaborative environment. We also need to do some significant work on the IGO School Playground. We've been working on updating that every year. We've seen some really nice improvements with the landscaping and mulch last year. We also added new equipment. There's additional things that we'd like to see over the next few years. One of the things is really increasing the accessibility for differently abled students to the playground. Another thing, Bud, you want to talk about fencing?
Fencing is a big thing, especially with the younger children. We about St. Mary's Church and the parking lots there, and then you have like the little wooded area. You know, you need just to have one little wander in your, eyes on them for 1 minute. So from a safety standpoint, I know that the staff would love to see some kind of fencing. And it also
just to protect the boundaries of the playground.
Keep it a little cleaner too, come over,
We are hoping to put together a formal written long-term improvement plan and to also be seeking some outside grant funding, hopefully to help us with our playground, with supporting our playground improvements. As Michelle mentioned, all of the 3 elementary schools are working on coordinating our school safety plans with the plan that's being written for the district at this point. We do have very comprehensive individual school safety plans in place, but as you know, with new situations, new health risks, new weather warnings, there's new information that needs to be incorporated into those plans. And we will be working with the police and fire in the district to update our plans in a way that's consistent and most efficient. The other goal is the R of the core values, the respect for diversity and dignity of individuals. We do want to continue working with our Have a Heart program at the IGO, which is a program that recognizes students for positive contributions and for demonstrating heart. We'd like to do some work on profiling individuals who demonstrate heart in the community and in the local news. We also talked about exploring strategies for helping parents support those behaviors at home through parent education and working with the PCO. The other part of that goal is promoting active community involvement. We do have a fairly significant relationship at this point at the IGO with the Foxborough Senior Center. They're actually coming, if anybody would like to join, to a concert at the IGO on Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. The senior chorus comes and sings with our 4th graders. We'd like to expand that relationship and involve the seniors in some of the other projects and with other grade levels at the IGO. It's a wonderful learning experience for the students and greatly enjoyed and appreciated by the Senior Center. Goal 3 is promoting communication among parents, teachers, town organizations, and residents. One of the things that we really want to work on next year, we do recognize we have the new ELA program, the Harcourt program this year, and we're implementing a new math program next year. With both of those programs, just like with our school improvement plans, there's a lot of language differences in how we learned math, how we learned to read. We do recognize that an essential component of the success of those implementations is going to be helping parents know how to help their children at home. We heard that loud and clear from the parents at the PDO meetings and as well as through surveys, and would like to plan several evening events to help address that. We also will be working on updating and improving the IGO School website to make more of this information easily accessible to parents. We will work with Paul Bortolotti and the new district template so that we're all consistent on that. The last is the safe, supportive environment. We did talk about a lot of our school improvement plans in the past have talked about supporting the transition of fourth grade students to the Ahern. Our school council really feels that we have many, many different programs in place for that at this point, and that it's a very well planned and well supported transition. So we've talked about for the last couple of years of really looking at other transitions that they experience in elementary, going from preschool into kindergarten, and from kindergarten, which is a half-day program, into the first grade. And so the focus of that goal has been how to better support our younger learners as they progress through the elementary years. We've done a lot of these things. We've started, as we started brainstorming as the school council, we just said, well, we can do that this year too. So a lot of these things we're doing now. But you can talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing.
What we found, like with kindergarten is coming into first grade, that it's a whole new world where they come to school all day long. It's the long bus ride and lunch, you know, and it's just your heart goes out for them. So if nothing else, like we want to make sure that like they know who the first grade teachers are. So the kindergarten teachers, I believe this week, are going to bring them all through our rooms just so they get to see a face. You know, they don't know who they're going to have, but at least they'll know, you know, it's another friendly face. We hope to be able to, when the fourth graders are out of the building, to have the kindergartners be able to go to like mini lessons of art, music, phys ed, just so that they have a sense of what it's like. So when they come next year, they kind of know what's coming here for them. And we're going to and they have snack. Come and share snack with us. And then all the first grade teachers are planning to read to the kindergartners just so, you know, they get to know us. And hopefully that will help.
Sure.
And that is the school improvement plan proposal for 2007 to 2009.
Questions, Martha?
No.
Kate? Katie?
I do have a question, and it's relating to, and again, it may seem like I'm scrutinizing this, but I did read over all three very carefully. We talked about consistency across the schools, across the district, and I'm looking at page 10, where we talk about increasing the amount of instructional time to mathematics, and we have 70 to 75 minutes a day for math at the IGO, and we have 60 at the Borough.
Yes. I've talked about that at length with Andrea Platters, our Director of Mathematics. The requirement is a minimum of 60 minutes a day per math. When we looked at our root causes for why we felt at the IGO our students were underperforming, we felt that time was a critical piece, and that we wanted to experiment with what would happen if we could increase to 75 minutes, provide additional time for computation practice, a little bit of extended time in the morning work for going over some of the word problems, things like that. And we decided we would pilot that and see how that worked out at the IGO for next year. After that point, the Burrell and the Taylor have other initiatives that they put in place to target their math objectives. At the end of the year, we'll take a look at what was most effective, and we'll certainly share ideas across the district too as we move forward. As I mentioned earlier today, next year when we come to do our status update, we're going to have to make adjustments next year. We won't be presenting a whole new plan, but we may fine-tune some things. So we're going to go with the directions that we've set and try to assess the effectiveness of the different interventions.
That's helpful, because I think someone, you know, myself looking at that, you know, and adding that. So that may be something then, even before the end of the year, that you may be thinking about changing. Okay.
Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
No, I just love Larry's question. You know, no matter what the area is, everyone has their own jargon, right?
Right, that's correct.
So that now my son's an 82nd Airborne Ranger, he tries to talk to me, and I'll say, Bill, layman's language, please. He says, oh, Mom, it's so hard to talk to you in civilian.
I'd be happy to put together a guide to interpreting the school improvement plan for you. Would be helpful.
All right.
I liked your presentation. Great job.
Thank you very much.
These are great.
Mr. Rowland's going to give you a new copy because
oh my God.
my secretary, I gave her the wrong piece of paper to type on page 20. So it's a mistake, and I told the kids I was going to admit it in public tonight that I made a huge mistake.
On page 20?
Well, it's okay, Kay, because Larry outed all of us. We didn't know what pedagogy was.
Oh, that's okay.
All right, first of
Betty
all,
said she knew what it was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As a teacher, she knew it.
I mean,
all right, I'm going to be
That's
very,
civilian
very
language
brief
to
because
me,
I'm not
Dave.
going to repeat what Ingrid and Michelle have already said. But first of all, I want to thank the parents who are here tonight, and I kind of discouraged the teachers from coming because I thought we were going to be 9 o'clock, so I said, no, don't bother. And I didn't even tell the parents to come because I thought it was too late and with babysitting issues. But I want to thank Kelly Blair, Bruce Gardner, and Chris Brolin, and Lori Howell, the parents, and then Colleen Barrett, Caitlin LeBlanc, Carrie Sturdy, Laurie Waterman, and our community members, Barbara Boats, for all the work they've done. And of course, Taylor School last year, you'll note, we did not follow the new plan. The school council had voted that they wanted to go one more year, and we wait till this year. Well, it was a lot of hard work, but they all came through. And Kelly and Bruce, I want to compliment them for going down to Staples today to have these colored copies. Just the cover runoff. We had nice, pretty color, like the. Oh, here we do have one. I'm sorry. We do have one that's all good. But it was taking our printers at school like a half an hour to do a few pages, so we decided we would just go to Staples and have it done. All right. First of all, our goals for the math were improving the facility and understanding of concepts of fractions, decimals, and percents, and then basic computation. And what we've done this year, we had George Leonard, John Ferguson, two gentlemen who are very competent in math. They've been coming in as volunteers to help work off their tax bill with the senior program. And then Tom Earhart just retired, and he was a math teacher at Dedham High School. So they've been coming in and working with the children, giving a little bit of extra time, like either during having lunch bunch. If the children want to volunteer, it's all on a volunteer basis. They can go for lunch bunches to do their math problems. And Andrea Platt has been very gracious and worked with us and given us all kinds of ideas and ways that we can work with the children in math. So we want to see if that has made any difference when the MCAS scores come back. So that's why you might see a difference in some of the times in here, because we thought if this worked. And then we also do a little bit of tutoring between 8:45 and 9:05, while many of the classrooms are having morning meeting. But the children only miss they would only miss one morning meeting a cycle, so they're not missing out on a lot. So what I just wanted to go through, the professional staff met with the ELA and math directors during when the MCAS and Terra Nova data came in, and then we had the school council members and then several other volunteers who worked with Dr. Ladd. He came in November, and he sat down and he walked all of the 8 teachers through the process on how to format our improvement plan, because we were behind the borough and the IGO. And then the professional staff worked together, like we had different across grade levels, and we had the speech teacher and the SPED teacher and the reading teachers also worked, and they went through and analyzed the data along with the 2 ELA directors, and we came up with the fraction and decimals, percentiles, and basic computation in math. And then we found that in our Terra Novas and our MCAS that Taylor School 3rd and 4th grade students were weak in nonfiction reading and also the vocabulary. So those were the 2 target areas that we chose. And as you see in here, we listed down some of the things that the teachers were going to do. We only chose 2 root causes in ELA because when Dr. Ladd talked with the teachers, they were working on a lot of things that he just said. 2, no more than 3. So that's what our teachers decided to go with, 2 root causes. And then Taylor School, for some reason, and we do a lot with it. I'm hoping this year you'll see an improvement in our MCAS, because we really, really worked hard on the open response. But we chose open response also because it just seems like the children don't have enough practice in it. So we're working on across the curriculum doing open response. Then our non-academic goals, we had the environment, and we had put in, I want to say a special thank you to Michael Leary. He's worked very, very hard with the school council, parents, and, well, the entire school council working with our environment in, like, the cafeteria and also the playground. So I really want to say a special thank you to him. But we're updating the Taylor School cafeteria. Parents are going to volunteer to paint it and paint murals in it. And then Mike said they were going to put tiles in this summer, time permitting. Then our playground, and Bruce he's chairman of the playground committee, so if you want to say anything about it. But our playground was old. It's like 20-something years old. And we have the inspector come around. Anything that needs to be done, we make sure we fix it so that for liability. However, we really feel that we need a new one. And Mike came down and said that he had put in for $50,000 for the CIP for 2008. So the school council and the PTO are planning fundraising. But I loved your idea, Martha. I want to give you a nice round of applause because really.
Well, I'll just offer, and I want to thank Mrs. Slattery too for her comments. It's interesting trying to raise money for a playground when you're used to selling donuts and cookie dough. Because playgrounds cost a lot more than donuts and cookie dough. We actually have a very interesting meeting coming up at our PTO meeting next week where we will determine how much money we have and can we proceed this summer with our phase 1 of our playground. And if you're not familiar with the Taylor playground, the biggest issue is in the lower grade area, our swings and our climbing equipment is all over the normal hard ground surface. So every consultant and every inspector we've had come in free of charge to look at our area says you've got a real concern with falling. That's your biggest issue. So we'd like to address that this summer if we can. We've got a number of fundraisers underway. We've been able to raise $13,000. Well, phase 1 is going to cost us in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000. So anything that you can do with any of your surpluses, we would thoroughly enjoy. It would be a big boost to us, and it might enable us to do something this summer. So thank you for that idea. And in time, we will get the Taylor Playground updated, and we'll be able, I think, I compliment the IGO and the borough. I think they've done some nice things that we've learned from, and thank you to the other principals who've given us some good ideas on how to raise funds for that.
Okay, then the third target area is the school safety plan, and that's very self-explanatory. And then under communication and collaboration, we want to update the school website, and we have a parent, Megan Scollins, who's been working hard on that, and also Kelly and Bruce have been working on it. And then the last one is to cultivate responsible students and have a positive school environment to ensure that children are respectful, and we want to reinforce their positive behaviors. And so we're going to continue the responsive classroom morning meetings. We would like to have everyone doing it every day, but we've set a goal of a maximum of 6 and a minimum of 4 times per cycle. So, and then continue the anti-bullying program and work with our TKWO in our community service projects. So, any questions?
Martha, any questions? Kate?
You changed the format. How many hours? I mean,
you can't imagine. We don't even. And look on page 28, Bruce. We forgot this right down here.
It's still not. I'm looking through it. It's still not.
It's
well,
still
remember,
not.
the DIP is a working, living document.
That's
so
right.
in essence, your school improvement plans are also.
This is a work in order, a work in progress, right, Dr. Norton?
We're getting there.
So.
One of the things that, and I just, my hat off not only to you, Kay, and your parents, but also to the borough and the borough and the IGO as well. What I like is everyone mentioned math, ELA, test taking, the environment, communication and collaboration. But what I like is that it's tailored to each individual school as you've done your analysis, your root cause. And you know what? Whether you're right, you will be right because you're also going to manage the plan and you do your own assessments. So you'll have that, and it becomes a living document. It's very exciting to see the commonalities because I think that also speaks to we're always concerned to also not just do what we can for each elementary, but also look district-wide to have both the individual and the broad picture. And I think my hat off to all 3 schools, because this is another year in a row that you've done that. You've still enabled the customization that makes each school very unique and addresses sometimes the unique needs but still meeting the broad overall standards of education and an assessment of how you're doing. So great job.
Well, this is the first time that every single teacher, every single staff member at the Taylor School has had a part in working on the school improvement plan, and I really like that they could volunteer, or during staff meetings they all worked together. If they were absent, I even had them, if they missed a staff meeting, then I asked them to work on one particular part of the school improvement plan. So, and I think the parents on the school council also were very, very the most active this year that we've ever had them. So,
it's clear, simple. You can follow them all easily, and I know I thank you for that.
Thank you. Sorry,
thank you. No, but thank you to you, all your staff members, and all of the parents. Your input and your working with us is so important. Please keep it up. And there's one other parent volunteer I'd like to compliment and have you pass this on, please. The hours that Kathy Manson has spent painting those murals. That's right. And I'm hoping that, I noticed cafeteria murals. Do you have her signed up for those too? Mm-hmm. But what volunteer and talent. It's incredible. So congratulations.
And thanks to
thank
Dr.
you to her.
We have our nice counter at the Taylor School, and also Paul Jackson, and the new library.
And Michael Leary.
And Michael Leary. Yes.
Katie, do you have anything?
Just echo what everyone else has said. So we're going to move on.
All right. Thank you so much. Great progress this year. All right, Mr. Jackson, why don't we now have a discussion first of your budget summary, your revolving accounts, and then yours and Dr. Norton's request for use of the surplus to date.
Okay. Updated budget summary statement since last school committee meeting. Surplus projection is up to just north of $180,000. It's an increase of $65,000 on paper from the last school committee meeting. However, $30,000 of that 65 we did discuss, which was the revenue that Spoke will be sharing with us, so that the actual change that wasn't discussed this last school committee meeting is about $30,000. In the actual detail, we have a net change of $1,200 in round figures. You can see the detail in terms of how we arrived at that. Taylor, $1,500. Ahern, we picked up almost $15,000. Bulk of that was for a staff member that had run out of sick time. High school lost $4,800. There was a grant amendment and increased tutor expense. Athletics, we picked up $3,600. We reprojected contracted services. Special education, $31,728. $30,000 of that was the Spoke collaborative funds that I spoke of earlier. Transferred some money from salary to expense and technology. Net change zero. Net change zero in transfers in art. Music transfers within the music accounts. All expense accounts, by the way, net change of zero. Transportation, reprojected a bus monitor on the special education. Reprojected Metco runs. Deficit in supplies, which would be what the highway bond uses to repair our buses. And a positive pickup of $258 on fuel. Net change $2,700. Net change of zero for plant. District-wide, we picked up $16,000. The sick leave buyback was reprojected. That was originally projected based on people that had said they were going to retire and then decided that they weren't going to retire, which then meant that the sick leave buyback will end up hitting us next year. That which is the bulk of it, and we reprojected workshops and a loss of $1,900 in the superintendent's office. Total change $65,480. Any questions on that? And
Well, we'd like to have a motion to accept the report.
I do have a couple of questions before we do that, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
If you would, Mr. Jackson, refresh my memory on the nurse under the high school, that grant amended. Where are we in the grant cycle? Because we still have several years left, so we've gotten...
We have next year, and I'm not sure if it's another year after that. I know we have next year, but I'm not sure.
So this is the grant amendment, or is this for the nurse leader stipend?
This was just an amendment within the grant that she transferred some money inside the grant.
Okay. Anything else, Kate?
Nope, I just...
Katie, any comments on this? Martha? Bevy?
No.
Can I have a motion then to approve the report and all the transfers that are in here?
I'll second.
Motion made by Martha, seconded by Bevy. Questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Before I get to the surplus, I wanted to make a statement. During the FY07 budget development, there were discussions with the AdCom subcommittee as to exactly how much of a salary variance that we should budget. And through those negotiations, we reached an agreement that we would budget at minus $280,000 salary variance as a projection of that we would pick up $280,000 in ins and outs in the salary account.
And Paul, just for the people at home that may not be familiar, that don't watch every week, the reason for that?
We project a dollar value to hire a new staff member. That staff member, or the ultimate person that's hired, might be hired at more or less than what we had projected. You have invariably a delay between the day a new employee was hired versus when the old employee left. It's very rare, unless it's the first day of school, that you'll have somebody that will come on board the day after the original person has left.
But most of it is turnover. We do a budget in October.
Most of turnover related.
By the time July comes, some experienced folks have left, some less expensive folks have been hired, there's been time, et cetera. And so historically, we've not built that into the budget. And you're saying going into this fiscal year, the advisory committee, after doing the due diligence, felt very strongly that we should build that into the budget, and you're saying that the compromise number that you built in was $280,000 as a one line to be determined through turnover and other savings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and there was some discussion that number should be higher.
Okay.
Than 280.
The advisory committee felt that it should be higher, correct?
Yes.
So therefore, Paul, that's certainly...
My buddy.
Paul, just again, for the people at home, therefore that surplus, available surplus is considerably lower than last year because of that. So when people are looking at this and saying, why aren't we ending up with something similar to last year?
Yes, correct.
Can I just make one comment? I don't want us to live under a cloud of, somebody's leaving at a higher salary and we're going to automatically bring somebody in at a lower salary. I don't want to leave that impression. I would rather hire someone with good experience that could cost me a little bit more and not have that kind of a shortfall hanging over my head. I'd rather give it back than have to say, well, I can't afford this person because I committed to the AdCom. I don't want that illusion out there. I want to know that we're going to hire quality people and that we're not going to look for a bargain, not at a fill place.
Right, but I think just what the advisory committee did is they looked at the last 3, 4, 5 years of history.
I realize that, but I don't want...
And they just simply said, based on your historical data, this is what you'll have saving. They were not advocating we hire less qualified people, and I don't think we have.
No, I don't think we have, but I don't...
It's balancing out. We've already made several hires for next year. Somebody will bring in at a master's plus 15, and yet, the next group that is coming through will say, okay, we've interviewed all these people, and the best person is a master's 1. So it's ending up averaging out. So far, we'll see. We're not quite finished yet, but so far that's where we are.
Go ahead, Paul. Finish.
And as the school committee was aware, there were curriculum updates that we were facing in the vicinity of $100,000 that were not built into the budget, but a decision was made that in the event we did have a favorable surplus above and beyond the $280,000, the committee would consider that to, in fact, fund these curriculum updates. And we have, in fact, the committee did vote to fund $90,000 for a math update out of surplus funds, which have now been removed from that 180. in hopes that it would be available at the end of the year. Simplistically, our budget is broken down into two sections, salaries and expenses. The $90,000 that went in as a reduction of the overall surplus actually increased our expenses. Currently, as I just explained, the surplus is projected at about $180,000. To further break that down, it really reflects a $186,000 surplus in salaries and a negative surplus, if you will, in expenses of just shy of $6,000. Now, every year when we build our budget, we build a budget to the best of our abilities, and then from that budget, we are now subtracting a projected salary variance amount, but then also we subtract from salaries the anticipated grant monies that we're going to get for salaries and then grant monies that we're going to get for expenses to work down to a bottom line number that we then go to the town and ask the town to fund the budget. So that when I say simplistically, there's in round figures, there is approximately $162,000 in the regular salary account that's contributing to this surplus. Bear with me. And then we picked up an additional $24,526 in grants for salaries that we didn't anticipate, which then adds to the $186,859 for salaries. And on the expense side, we are actually over by $30,937, but we also picked up $24,995 in additional grant money that we hadn't anticipated, which nets out to the minus $5,900. What further complicates this whole surplus calculation that makes it very difficult, if you remember, we had budgeted as a salary our Metco transportation to and from school. And historically, we had provided the bus, we had provided the driver, and the driver was paid out of the salary account. Last year, we outsourced the bus, went to a contracted basis. There's just under $36,000 odd is showing up as a salary surplus because we originally budgeted the money in the salary account, and so that's showing a surplus, and it overstated, or my expenses look like I've overstated it because I paid for that service as an expense. So one of the things that I'm planning to do for the next school committee meeting is try to give you a breakdown of that $186,000 in salaries and subtract from it items that I would consider to be one-time items or one-time contributors to that surplus. Another example that I would use, we had budgeted for 16 school buses. We redid the routes last year. We used 15. We had budgeted in the salary account for the 16 drivers. We're only using 15. I've got a surplus. Now in the FY08 budget, we only budgeted for 15. So that money won't be carried forward to next year. Another example would be we had a half-time custodian at the IGO school. We spent $1,700, had an issue, decided that we really didn't need the custodian. We didn't fill a position in 07, picked up another $15,000+ into the salary surplus, and that custodial position of a 0.5 was eliminated in the 08 request, so that money wouldn't be there next year. So I'll come up with a list of items that I would consider or identify as kind of one-timers to bring down what I think ongoing salary surplus number would be, and I'll explain that at the next school committee meeting.
Paul, if I could just maybe simplify it just a little bit. The purpose of that, first of all, was to acknowledge that the advisory committee was fairly accurate in what they thought the salary surplus was going to be. And while we negotiated a lower amount, we as a committee did that knowing that we didn't have money in the budget for the curriculum updates. So theoretically, had we accepted the advisory committee's higher number, we would have used that money to fund the curriculum update. So it would have netted out. The reason why that's important is, for the advisory committee to know that they were pretty accurate in their estimates based on history, but also for the public to know from a transparency standpoint that that's the fact. However, what we would have done as a committee, had we taken the larger number, we would have put the money into the curriculum, which we all knew we were going to do. So the ultimate bottom line is that the surplus, if you forget all these pluses and minuses and all the ins and outs, the surplus is about $300,000 or so, substantially below last year, as you mentioned.
And part of that is the committee committed to better financial budgeting, better fiscal economy throughout the entire year. And the town has about a 1% contingency built into their budget. 1% built into our budget would be about $225,000. So you can see that the $300,000 surplus, $100,000 which we use for the curriculum updates, which I don't consider to be a surplus because we knew we needed to do that, we didn't put it in there. So that means our real surplus is about $200,000, which is well below the 1%. And the reason why that's important is the committee's got to decide tonight and next week what we want to do. Now, last year, the committee was very clear. We looked at all of the requests, and we had some people in the audience arguing spend every nickel, and some people in the audience arguing since the town didn't know about some of these things, you ought to give the money back. We want to be very fair about it, make sure people know that we're looking at about a $200,000 surplus. That was unplanned. That is less than 1%, and therefore the committee will probably, much like on the town side, look at spending most of that surplus on things that the committee and the administration believe will add value to the quality of education in Foxborough. And so forget all the ins and outs and all the debits and credits. Paul's going to try to do an analysis at the next meeting. He'll sit down with the advisory committee and show it to them so everybody can audit the numbers. But at least for the people at home to understand, we're looking at a 1% would be about $225,000. We're looking at around $200,000 plus the $100,000 that we knew we had to put in for the curriculum. And now when you look at the list that they have before us, they're going to be asking us to consider spending that surplus between now and the end of the year. The nice thing, last year we sat here at this month and we said, wow, if we only knew in September, October, November, December we had this huge surplus coming. This year, by getting updates every month, we've been able to do some things on a regular basis throughout the year, moving money around, shifting money around, approving the curriculum updates, other kinds of things, because Paul put in the fiscal discipline, the fiscal accountability. So for the folks at home, I think I want them to know we're using the money smarter, better, wiser than we have in the past with more transparency. And so when we look at that list of surplus items tonight, what the committee will have to decide, just like last year, do you want to fund some of those or do you want to give it back to the town to be used for future years? Now, last year we said anything over 1% automatically was going to go back, but at the end of the day we gave back $500,000 last year. This year it's a substantially different story. Thanks to the advisory committee for all their coaching and mentoring and their discipline around the budget, and thanks to Paul and Dr. Norton for all the work they've done as well. So we're left with what do we do with the surplus, which Paul is now saying is that, how much did you say, Paul? $180,000. And you and Dr. Norton have a list of things that you think would add value to the district if we would consider funding.
Yes, sir. The surplus, FY07 surplus list dated June 4th is really an identical list to the one that was proposed at the last meeting, with the exception of an additional $3,574 to fund the purchase of a public address system at the football field. It is in dire straits. School committee received, and you very well might not have received it, I received it, has received a request from the Boosters Club that if we spend $3,574 and purchase a public address system, they will take care of all the other expenses associated with its installation. It is something that I've heard about for a year and a half, that it's in dire needs. Quite frankly, if it had died and didn't work completely, my suspicion is we would have been evaluating accounts and chasing, and we would have repaired it or replaced it at the time.
Anybody who's been to the football games knows it's horrible.
It's painful.
It's horrible.
So that's a new request. In addition, we had previously asked for some software for the high school to work and facilitate web updates. There was a further discussion between Paul Bodolotti and Jerry Roy. We're asking for an additional 4 copies, one for each of the other 4 schools, so that each school is using the same software product to work on the update, again, to bring some consistency.
Paul, is that to update their websites at each of the...
To provide updates, yes. So that is another...
Thank you for explaining that. I wasn't sure.
$1,396.
Got my vote.
Last item on the list is for 6 defibrillators for the sports department. I also attached an memo to the committee that I sent tonight that you didn't get ahead of time. There's been several discussions between myself, Dr. Norton, Keith Gibson, the athletic director, high school principal, Jeff Theodos, and interestingly enough, the MIAA, the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, has no policies or procedure associated with the automatic external defibrillators. And as we discussed purchasing defibrillators for the sports team, there were questions that started to be raised, and I put a few of them down. Who will provide training to anybody required to carry one of the AEDs to a game or practice or utilizing an existing unit? Are there legal ramifications for school personnel that would potentially use it? Is there an expectation that we have a trained person and an AED at all practices and games, home and away? One of the concerns that was discussed with Keith Gibson, there are times that the varsity and the JV teams all practice together, which would then require, if we made this decision, to have one of these AED units. But if all of a sudden the varsity is at the high school and the JV is at the Ahern school, does that now mean we should have 2, one for each one of the teams? If we go to other towns and we have a game and we're carrying an AED to our practices and we find out that the other town does not have an AED at the game, are we now going to ask the coach to bring that AED to the games? And we provide an EMT at football games, and our trainer. We provide an EMT at lacrosse games, which we're not required to, and we provide an EMT at hockey games. That means that I can't tell you if every other lacrosse team that we play, if they have an EMT on site or not. So some of these questions, we decided that we really need to do a little bit more study, think about it, and I'm going to recommend that, although I think this is a worthy expenditure, I'd like to see a committee formed, and I've recommended some members to be on the committee, such as the high school principal. We'll have a new athletic director as of July 1st, somebody from the fire department, preferably an EMT.
Ed Newton, I believe, has already volunteered.
Our head nurse, coaches, to really sit down and work out what the protocol would be, what do we expect, what the procedure is, so that we don't go out and purchase 6 or 8 of these, send them to the AD, and then the AD looks at the box and says, well, what am I supposed to do? And I'd like to be able to come back with a report from the committee prior to September with a recommendation to say, this is what we'd like to do and this is how we'd like to implement it. So that my recommendation would be to remove the $12,000 from the surplus calculation, with the understanding that when the committee does come back with a recommendation, any required funds, we take a look at revolving accounts to support the purchase of the AEDs.
So, Paul, your recommendation is the $90,383, which is 1, 2, and 3, the $55,000 for musical instruments, the $35.74 for the public address system, and the $13.96 for the software?
Yes.
So what's that come to roughly as a...
$150,000 roughly out of the $180. Okay. And then that other 30, are you going to come back at our next meeting and talk about the playgrounds or other needs that the schools might have?
I'd like to see them come back with something as to what each of them needs. Safety's an issue.
Well, and we did that last year. Mike O'Leary, I don't know if you're still here. I mean, we thought the drain in Borough wasn't working, so instead of being a $2,000 fix, it turned out to be $6,000, and it kind of was a slippery slope, and we did that with the surplus, and that was the right thing to do. We've done that with IGO. IGO got loom and got those things, and you know what? This year it'll be Taylor's turn. So whether that's 2 or 6, we don't know the number, but I'm absolutely confident that Mr. O'Leary, you will set us straight with the right number. But I'd like to back up a minute on the defibrillators. I don't have a problem at how you choose to deploy them. I have absolute faith when our athletic director said, you know what, we do need that, and the right number is 6. We need to get the policy, and you're right to set that up. But what I want to make sure is that come September, however you plan to do it, that there is money and that it will be done by September. I don't know how you plan for track, because the reality is those runners are out there running, so they're not going to be running with a defibrillator. So it makes sense to have a good policy. But what I want to be sure on in a year, that we spend $55,000 on needed musical instruments, we take the 10 or the 12,000 that we need to keep our students safe. In 3 immediate towns this year, they dropped dead on the practice field. That may or may not have saved a life, but you know what? It's a small spend to ensure the life of a student, the life of a referee. We have referees whose lives have been saved at a game. I understand EMTs. That's MIA rules, and we've honored those. But you know what? The 3 young men who dropped dead were at practice games. So I'd like us to have some kind of policy. And I'd also like to know what revolving account, because I know we keep drawing those down. So
there's
would you
still
say
over
the
$1 million
building-
sitting in those, so it's very easy to fund this through a revolving account.
As long as the group is, I'm willing to withdraw that, as long as we say, the policy will be reviewed, and we will put, we will protect our athletes
I
as
think
we
we
do
need to have
our
this in
students.
place, though, I agree with you, Kate, before August 1st, because our varsity teams are practicing come the month of August. So if we want to be consistent with really doing practices,
Good point, Kate.
we need
Good point.
to kind of move on this
But
and
keep
work
in
on
mind,
it during
Katie,
the
how
summer.
many do we have already, Paul, in the school?
4 at the high school, 2 at the Ahern, and 1 at each elementary school.
So we
The
do have
issue,
enough
Larry, is
for the
they're-
summer practice
But they're
right now.
not carried out on the practice field. If
But we physically have them to do that.
But I guess what I'm referring to also
No,
is
that's not what the point is, and what the athletic director and what other schools have done, Larry, is that if you have, the coach carries the defibrillator out to the practice.
Right.
I'm not worried about games, and our
I'm saying-
football
but I'm
team
saying-
has it,
but
but not all the sports have the coach.
I understand that. Katie's
have that.
comment was not to do it by September, but to do it by August, because we have some teams practicing. The question was, how many teams are practicing in August, and how many defibrillators do we already have? We already have enough for the teams practicing in August. That doesn't mean that we don't buy the extras in September. And I will commit to you as chairman of the committee that I will bring forward the proposal with the funding out of the revolving accounts as soon as we get the policy in place and the new athletic director makes the recommendation to us.
Larry, if I can just say, though, what I was also referring to is also the policy, because what you're detailing here is, again, who's going to be the responsible parties, the training, that all needs to be done. I wasn't really
Right.
worried about the money, I know that's there, by August 1st, because we need policies. Again, we want uniformity with all sports, however they're going to be identified, all practices. And I think that we need to have a policy in place so that we can make sure that we are doing
Correct.
that.
And then when the new athletic director starts in July, that'll be one of the issues that he will focus on.
So just for my clarity, they will in fact, when they go out to practice, they will now have, the coaches will have access to a defibrillator. Because, see, the defibrillators we have
We have to
are
get
in
them
the
trained,
office.
too.
See, Kate, it's
Okay,
not,
so
it's not
I
that
just-
easy. You just don't throw a defibrillator out on the ground and expect somebody to be able to use it. You have to have people trained to use these things.
Absolutely.
And there are expectations, and it's just not, it's not just buying them. It's not just writing a policy.
Absolutely.
It's also having people who have a high level, trust me, of confidence to be able to use these things. And you just can't expect anybody to be able to do this.
Well,
And so
actually,
it's gotta be
Martha, I have been
redefined.
trained, and you know what? Scouts are trained, and Captain Ed Newton has done this before.
That,
We need
Kate,
to
that's
get more
wonderful.
people trained.
That's wonderful. But
I
you
think
know
we're
what?
in agreement.
When you
We're-
have to react within a situation, trust me, it's altogether different. Anybody can run you through it. Anybody can tell you how to use it. But if you don't have a level of confidence within yourself to use that defibrillator, let me tell you, I've been around and had to do CPR when everybody around me said, you know, I took the course, but I couldn't help you. I couldn't move. That's not the type of person I want carrying a defibrillator out onto the grounds. I want somebody who feels
We're
comfortable.
all agreeing. I'm
All
just saying,
agreeing.
let's set a deadline, because I'd hate to see this not happen.
Setting a
That's-
deadline and making sure that we have the right people in the right place to
I'm
do
not
the right
disagreeing
thing.
with that.
That's important.
I just
Properly.
wanted to complicate the issue and let you know, because
Go
it's not
for it.
complicated enough. But I talked with Sharon Kelly. The defibrillators we have right now are Medtronic defibrillators, which will not be made perhaps until November and December. And we have to update the ones that we have right now because they don't include pediatric pads. They only have adult pads. So we're already going to transition with the ones that we have. We're all set to take care of that. But then in talking to Medtronics and trying to keep the defibrillators fairly uniform, so that if I'm trained on one, I pick up the next one, it's going to look like the same thing. Instead of an emergency, I'm trying to pull out the instruction booklet. We're also needing to make sure that we have something that is compatible, that is up to date, that has all those things. So we're already working with Medtronic, but I just wanted to compound it and say it's not so simple as calling up and saying, okay, I want 6 more of what we already have. They don't exist. They wouldn't be appropriate. And it's going to take us a little bit, it's going to take this committee a little bit more time than just going out and buying defibrillators. So just to compound it.
In the audience this evening is our new superintendent who will be starting on July 1st. I'm sure he's heard this discussion. He understands how important safety is and how important it is to the committee. And I'm sure that when he gets here and the new athletic director gets here the same day, that as they're talking initial goals and objectives, that they'll work through this and have something back to the committee so that we can take appropriate action, and funding will not be an issue. I can guarantee you that, Kate.
That's all I want to know.
All right?
That we do due diligence, we do the right thing, and that we don't put it off, we do it for this year.
We're working on it.
Any other questions on Paul and Dr. Norton's request for $150,000 of the surplus on these items on this page?
Did we say that we are going to have Michael Leary also look again, just to very quickly compare the playgrounds of the 3 elementary schools, or?
Yes.
So that there could be something else.
There's 30,000 left, plus whatever plus or minus happens in June. So.
One thing, Kate, we did...
The driveway, I won't even bring that one up, I hit the roofs too.
If you looked at our CIP request over the next few years, one of the problems down at the Taylor, obviously, is their playground was made by the parents many, many years ago when they used tires, when they used railroad ties, telephone poles. Our insurance company goes through, looks at it, and cringes. So our request next year with CIP is going to be to eliminate that entirely, reseed the bank, put stairs up for them, and then any excess funds start replacing equipment that we're tearing down. So, there's no guarantees we will get the CIP money, but we are going to request $50,000 as a safety issue for the children, plus the fact that they don't have mulch under this because it's on a hill, so they have stone. So as the kids fall, they're falling into stone, not into the mulch, because, again, it's built on a hill. We had mulch every time it rained. We'd be shoveling off the driveway back up into the hill again. So,
Mike, what I'd like to ask you to think about, though, is we're going to go through the revolving accounts in just a few minutes. There's over $1 million sitting in there. In building rental, there's over $300,000 sitting there. If there are some immediate safety needs on playgrounds, rather than wait a year and maybe getting money, maybe not getting money, I'd like you to come back to the committee and talk about, if you believe it's really a safety need, let's look at using some of that revolving money now and not waiting for someone to get hurt later on. So I'm open to, and you'll see, and the public can see the information, the building rental alone. And some of that building rental was money we received in Taylor from renting the gym to the church. So to use some of that money to repair safety hazards there is an appropriate use of that building rental money. So it isn't just a matter of the surplus. I think as a voter, they say to us, why do you keep coming to the taxpayer if you're sitting on some of this revolving money? We've used some of the revolving money in the last 12 months as a committee to do some very valuable things. We still have lots of money there. We don't want to spend the whole thing for one at one time. But these safety needs at the playgrounds could be a very good use of some of that additional surplus money, and something that would allow us to do it sooner rather than later. Now, recognizing your folks are pretty busy all summer long, so we may not get to it this summer, but we could get to it before the end of the school year next year, which is a lot sooner than they would be if we waited the whole cycle.
If money's available, we'll make it a high priority, because I feel it is unsafe.
That's what I want to hear.
I think one of the biggest problems you run into is that our fields are also being used by other people. I mean, I can remember going to softball games at the Taylor School, and I'd let my kids and now my grandchildren run off and play on those tires and those things. And it's not the same thing as when school is in and you've got a teacher saying, get off of that, get away from that area. I mean, parents don't know that their kids probably shouldn't be in a particular area, so before you know it, we're going to have a huge problem.
And we have the financial wherewithal
we need to do it.
to be fiscally conservative and still address those safety issues.
Well,
so you can come back to us.
Well, we've got some figures because, again, the PTO and Bruce has had people come in and do a study and phase in new playground area, relocate it, so we can kind of, we've already got some numbers, so we can kind of step up that process.
Okay.
And I'll get you some figures to remove what is there, seed it, grade it, so on and so forth, and then take whatever money we can give them, along with their fundraising, to start replacing this equipment.
And the other thing is the fence issue at the...
Yeah, I'd like you to look at the safety issues in all the playgrounds and come back to us with what is reasonable for us to fund out of the revolving accounts, and work with the parents and work with the schools to see how much they think they can come up with, and let's put a plan where we work together as a community to address these important needs.
That's great.
Thank you.
All right?
Great.
Okay, is there a motion to support Paul's request for the 150?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Ms. Lord.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Slattery. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. For the items you've recommended, Paul, on this document, you and Dr. Norton.
Thank you
very much.
Now, you still owe us at the next meeting update on the June numbers, so that whatever is going to be left, we'll consider it as part of the playground or giving it back to the town, whatever makes sense at the time.
Yes.
But the next meeting in June will be our last meeting to address any remaining surplus from that standpoint.
Yes.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, I've lost my agenda here. Next item is the school calendar.
A school committee schedule.
School committee calendar, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I already have a suggestion.
Okay.
Particularly listening to the statement of interest concerns tonight, it is of such great need and such importance, and holds such a high eventual impact on the entire system. I would like to suggest that perhaps we move our July meeting from the 16th to the 9th for the following reasons. It would let us give the selectmen an extra week. If we need to come back and address it immediately, it would leave us the possibility of adding the 16th to the 23rd as a second meeting.
Okay.
The other thing is, we don't have to, if we have to plan an extra meeting,
We can always plan a special meeting.
It doesn't have to be on a Monday, so.
Right.
But I was just thinking, because I didn't realize we had to go through the two steps, just us, but that would give us an extra week to share the information.
So July 9th instead of July 16th, okay.
Can I just make one, that is July 4th, is previous week.
That's
and
why I picked the 16th, because I didn't want anybody
Yeah,
to
I'm a
take a
little,
vacation
yeah,
around that.
that's a little bit tricky.
Before we wait.
Yeah,
It's a great idea, Bev,
yeah.
but would we, would we also lose people, because that's also high vacation?
Yeah, that's why I was, people may take
Well-
it before the after part of that.
Which people?
Well, I forgot.
You're extending July 4th into July 9th?
But as Martha
The whole
said,
week.
Larry, if
I'm not
anything
gonna be
comes
here,
up, we
but-
will have a special, we have the flexibility to have a
Yeah.
To call a
special
special
meeting.
meeting,
Yeah.
according to
If we have
everybody's
that.
schedule.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about.
I see what you're saying, but I think that's going to run into the
July 4th weekends?
Yeah, it's,
A lot of people away, it's a hot plant shutdowns.
It's the
can't
Monday
sell it.
after, it's July 4th.
Right.
July 4th is like a Tuesday or Wednesday this week, and it's the following Monday.
Well, wouldn't people be back on the Sunday?
Not
I mean, this is
necessarily. There are
a Monday.
There are a lot of plant shutdowns that are scheduled, and so a lot of people don't have a choice. They have to take
Yeah, I'm
their
going to have a
vacations.
conflict, I may have a conflict with that, but the rest of the committee.
Did you have any other suggestions, Betty?
or we leave them both open as a possibility, depending on what we need.
Right, okay.
Okay.
And what comes up?
Which
What?
means what, we're putting it in, or we're not putting it in?
We're not putting
we
it
would
in,
deal
we'll
with
put it
it
in if we
if we
need
Okay,
to.
okay.
And again, if we need a
I see what
special
you're saying,
meeting
Doug.
just to approve the document,
We can do that.
we can do it.
Yeah, special
We have
meeting.
some policy meetings coming up in
That's
July too.
right,
We could
yeah.
even do it on one of those if we had to.
Oh, that's right, we
Well,
have,
it's taking the whole month of July off.
has this schedule been cleared with our policy meetings on Friday night?
I know, I was
Is
just
there
wondering
any
about that.
overlapping?
All right, Betty, anything else?
I know that by policy, we are supposed to have our meetings on the first and third Mondays of every month. We never can do that in May because our first Monday is election, second Monday is
Town meeting.
But I want to back up to February. I'm hoping that this next year, as we did this year, we can have our budget finished. I mean, thank you to Mr. Jackson and his entire team. We had it finished by January, which surprised everybody. But my question is, if we have that horrendous amount of work finished by the 28th of July, do we want to schedule...
20th of January?
Yeah. Would we want to schedule, the 4th, which is only 1 week after that, and then we have 1 week of school, vacation, and then a second meeting?
Well, don't forget, if we don't have agendas, if we don't have, we can always cancel them.
But, I mean, I'm just, because it's different that I'm studying it.
Yeah.
So do we want to do that?
Part of the problem is because of school vacation week, though, in February.
So
just the past few years, we've had just one meeting in February, so it makes it that we'll go the 28th and then the next week one meeting. That means from the 25th of February to the March 3 is only 1 week.
One of the advantages of the additional couple of meetings is, don't forget, we're now going to review SIPs on a quarterly basis. We're going to review DIPs. There are going to be a number of issues that, instead of staying to 11 or 12 o'clock, we'd like to try to end the meetings at a reasonable time. So we can adjust these as we go along. I just tried to pick as many of the first and thirds as I could and work around holidays or special occasions.
Does it matter that it's a staff development day on the 28th of January?
No, we've had school committee meetings before on staff development days.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it.
Is there a motion to approve? Made by Martha, second by Katie. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries 5-0.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Going with July 9th to the 16th.
no, we're going with the 16th, and we'll hold that if we need to.
Okay.
So the motion was as submitted.
Thank you for clarifying that, Wendy.
You thought that was going to be really easy, didn't you?
Paul, did you want to cover the revolving accounts?
Yes, sir. I was hoping you were going to forget it.
No.
Providing an update to the revolving accounts, each revolving account, with one exception, cafeteria account. I'll talk about that in a second. I believe the last update on the revolving accounts was March 14th. Balance in the athletic revolving account as of the 1st of June is $19,000, projecting $19,006 as the balance as of July 1st. Off-duty transportation, balance balance June 1st, $52,981. We're expecting $3,000 more in income and $1,500 in expenses. Projected balance as of 7/1, $54,481. I'd just like to make a note that we had budgeted last year, I believe, $2.50 a gallon for bus fuel, and I think we paid as high as $2.80, and then it dropped down for a number of months. We were really lucky, and we were paying $2.10 a gallon. Plus, with the elimination of the Metco bus and the elimination of one of our regular buses, we used less fuel. Next year, I believe I budgeted $2.35 a gallon. The Director of Finance indicated that starting May 1st this year, the price is going to go to $2.40 for the balance of the year. We just got another memo that for the month of June, it's gone to $2.60. So I'm just pointing out the fact that fuel is up, and I might be in a deficit situation before we even start the next fiscal year for us.
And this account would be one to offset that?
This would be one that, yes, I would advocate using.
Okay.
Building rental, June 1st, $336,000 balance. Projected another $500 in income, $4,000 in expenses. Projected balance as of July 1st, $333,000. Next year, we will not see quite as much income because the church has now moved out of Taylor School.
But certainly enough in that account to do some playground work.
Yes. Tuition revolving, balance as of June 1st, $346,000. We're projecting another $4,000 in deposits, not anticipating any additional expenses. Projected balance, $350,000.
And that's an account that could be used in future years for curriculum updates that come in higher than we had anticipated in the budget, correct?
Yes, it would also, we could use it for tuitions, that if we had unexpected tuitions.
Right.
Circuit breaker, which is, it really isn't a revolving account. It's a reimbursement account from the state. And we had over-projected this year what we thought we were going to receive. But the balance as of June 1st is $140,000. We're still expecting $107,000 more from the state, with a projected balance as of July 1st of $248,000. Our projection for next year of $434,000 in income is really a projection. It's actually what we received this year, and it won't be till the end of June when the claim form is filled out that we'll have a better sense of exactly what that number is. But the bottom line is there'll be approximately $250,000 in there as of July 1st. Extended day balance as of June 1st, $92,749. We're expecting about $5,000 in deposits, $15,000 in expenses. Projected balance is a little over $82,000. I'll take a minute to say thank you to Kathy Layton. Kathy Layton this year polled parents, and for the first time in our history, we actually provided daycare over April school vacation. We had done a projection as to what the cost was going to be. I think we actually turned a profit of about $800 for the week, and I think a lot of people were happy that we provided the service, and it might be expanded next year, in that people had indicated had they known earlier that we were going to offer it, they might have taken advantage of it instead of making other arrangements.
Is that February vacation?
We did it April school vacation.
April vacation.
This year, yes. Adult ed balance as of June 1st, $30,949, which should be the balance as of July 1st. Summer school is one of the tricky accounts. Balance as of June 1st is $28,000. We're expecting deposits of $70,000. That's because people prepay for the summer program, so they pay us by the end of this fiscal year, but we don't spend the money to support the program in terms of salary and expenses until after this fiscal year. So the expenses will be next year. So we'll have a projected balance of $96,000, but by the end of August, we'll be way back down to the $28,000 range. The next three accounts, music, other school revenue, gifts for education, scholarships, are basically in and out. It's very difficult to project what's coming in, what's going out. A lot of times the gifts are earmarked for specific things, and I know that some of that $57,000 in gifts for education will be gone. Invensys funds a lot of the clubs and after-school activities at the middle school, which haven't hit the account yet. And material replacement lost book, $4,700, balance $46,000. The one account that I didn't have on here was cafeteria. I did not have an update on the cafeteria. I will in the next meeting. I will point out, however, that we are projecting to spend $7,250 on cafeteria tables and some additional cafeteria chairs out of the cafeteria revolving account. The indications at this point in time, we should indicate that we should be okay in that account, and we should not have to change our lunch prices for next year. But I would tell you that a year from now, by this time next year, we will be coming back with a request to go up on our lunch prices for the following year. But I think we'll be okay for next year, assuming that we don't have any major catastrophes in terms of equipment failure.
Okay. Any questions from the committee on the revolving accounts? Anybody in the audience have a question? Okay. Dr. Norton, other matters?
Yes. We need to congratulate some folks. I had the privilege, and my timing was impeccable. I arrived at Bridgewater State College just in time on Friday to hear 4 of our students present at the Invention Convention, Project Invention Convention. They were Georgia Duncan, grade 7, Carolyn Schlubeck, grade 7, Jeremy Gigi, grade 6, and Timothy Cowley, grade 8. They finished first place for most marketable invention Their invention is a vehicle, you're going to love this, a vehicle locator for software for cell phones, so that and they demonstrated, they had a nice commercial that they showed. You get out of your car and you push a button and say, this is where I'm going to be, and then go do your thing. When you push the button, it directs you right back to your car so that you can find yourself. It also has locator for additional places that you can go to. They've worked with Inventus again. Thank you to the engineers. So they won first place for most marketable, and they came in second in overall scoring.
Excellent.
Congratulations. Excuse me, it's important that I mention that team was put together by Mr. Alan Sharman, who worked with the students and did an excellent job, so thank you, Mr. Sharman.
We did receive a letter from a Margaret Chasen. Are you and Paul going to update us on that?
I don't have it with me. Do you have it with you? We did receive it here. You're exactly right. Is it in here?
We're currently gathering some information as to the level of funding for the sped packs and surrounding towns.
Would you just brief so the public knows the request that came, just 2 minutes on what the letter is about and then what the status is, so that she knows we're going to respond to her on a timely basis.
Yep. Margaret Chasen is the FECE PAC chair. This is regarding annual funding for the FCE PAC, which stands for the Foxborough Special Education Parent Advisory Council. It says it is a mandated organization that assists families of children with special educational needs within the Foxborough School District. FSCPAC is in need of reliable funding to fulfill its mission of providing parents of children in special education with information, resources, and support. Past efforts of the leadership of CPAC and fundraising efforts have been disheartening. There are very few people actively involved in the CPAC, although many attend workshops and speaker presentations. The general parent population is already tapped out with PTOs doing multiple fundraisers, and the Foxborough CPAC simply does not have the same level of volunteerism as those groups. PTOs are comprised of parents who are drawn to these social organizations for fun enrichment to their children's education experience. The CPAC is made up of parents of children with often overwhelming physical, educational, emotional needs who are struggling to learn what they can do to help their children. Fundraising is the focus of the PTOs, but is not the focus of CPACs, and the energy expenditure required to focus on raising money diverts the group from focusing on its mandate. What they are asking for, she quotes a law, as a result of discussions ongoing for the last 2 years, Foxborough this year has allocated $400 for the use of the Foxborough CPAC. However, I am unsure of the source and permanence of this funding. Accessing the funds has provided has proved time-consuming, and I would request that the future funds be deposited into the Foxborough CPAC's bank account. That we cannot do.
From a legal standpoint.
For legal, I understand that it is time-consuming, but we cannot grant that one. Many CPACs are given funds from special education under inclusion grants or professional and subscription funds. The Foxborough CPAC needs some funds to function and meet the required mandate. Funds are used for basic supplies of communication, programming, association membership fees, program materials, resource library materials, hospitality, speaker fees, and the like. With proper funding, the group would someday also like to add programs such as teacher appreciation nights, scholarship donations, and funding for conferences and workshops. They are asking to receive between $500 and $2,500 annually. Again, they are currently receiving $400. They specifically, other districts have asked for that. Foxborough CPAC is requesting an annual budget of $1,500. And again, they've been receiving.
You'll have a recommendation at our next meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. Just so I want the person to know that we are reacting to her letter, and we will respond at the next meeting.
And just as a note of interest, out of FY07 funds, there were we expended $190 to pay the Mass PAC membership fee, and another $300 for speakers. And I do not have a number, but we also provided postage and copy services for the pack for a total of $490 plus postage and copying out of this year's budget, and there's $400 that has been set aside out of next year's budget.
Right, we voted, it's in our minutes, we voted that at our last, right. I would like to just, if I may, I think the issue is their membership fee is $100. Right. And we very graciously offered to pay that last year, but although the invoice was submitted in June, it didn't get paid to the end of November. So the PAC was excluded from using any of the services for the first 3 months. So whatever your recommendation, I think, obviously we can't do anything illegal, but whatever we need to tell the PAC so that who to submit the invoice to and how to do that to make that more efficient so that it's not taking 3 or more months to get reimbursement. I think if you could come up with that plan, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Okay. Martha, would you like to go? And would you also, as part of yours, would you update the community on the policy process?
We're moving along. We're doing quite a bit as a committee in order to try and eliminate a step, having Jim Hardy sit down with the subcommittee and then the subcommittee come back. So we're all actively sitting there, and I think we're going along pretty well. We've got one section, it's pretty lengthy coming up, but we have to finish up on another section. So I'm very happy with where we are.
This Friday is our next meeting.
Yep. We're going to do their homework.
They're all televised, so people can watch them.
Could you just let us know, is it 4 now that we have to, or we're going to do 2? Or are we going to shoot for the 4?
Well, we're too small, and I don't know. Just do
Are we ready with all 4? Up to all 4?
It all depends on how much you talk and how much, how many questions you have.
I'll behave. I'll behave.
No offense, but
Is that a promise?
You got to stay on track.
I'll do my best. I told you I was anal. If something doesn't match, I will bring up the words, but I'll try to be efficient.
What section are you up to? We're 2 behind.
We've done A, B, C, D, I believe.
And we thought we were going to be 2 further
But E
sections
and F
along.
aren't that big, but G is
Huge.
huge.
J.
G.
We're working.
You want
We're
J.
coming. We're coming. We're coming. If we're speaking about policy, all of you did ask me to go back and review the wellness.
Right.
The committee with 5 members met. They had the materials beforehand. They came, we went over word for word. They took the many suggestions. I mean, there were several suggestions from MASC. This is what you could include. Some of it is repetitive. And I didn't realize we would just I don't have it here, but I can go exactly through every single one of our statements can be applied to a certain specificity on the mask. We have extras in ours, including pandemic, which they didn't even mention. And the result is unanimously they rejected masks. They want us to stick to our succinct, bulleted, and when I come back to you, I can show you their paragraph 2, 4, and part of 3 is in this statement for us. But I didn't bring materials.
We can
so
cover that Friday night. When we
right,
do
but I
policy.
just, seeing as we're updating, they rejected masks. They want us to keep it as we have it written.
Did you have anything else?
Our committee wants to keep it that way?
The wellness committee that was formed wants to keep it that way.
A couple things. I don't know if anybody's available or if you've gotten this about going to a Southeast Division meeting for MASC.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. It's my late night. I'm going to try and swing by there, but I can't promise. I would love to see us as a committee become more involved with MASC. I think we need to get our foot in there, and we need to establish ourselves on these committees. And I think it's a pretty...
Well, I have the past,
huge
since I've been on, I've been trying to go to the divisional meetings, and that one of ours, we toured the wonderful brand-new school in Whitman.
No, but I would love to see us more active as a committee on the committee, and I think, by trying to get to these, to see what's available, what we have available time-wise to sit on these committees, because it's a huge commitment. I know And did everybody get the legislative?
Right.
Okay. All right, there's some good things in here, and hopefully, you know, one of the things is the kindergarten grants, and I know when we were in and we talked to Pat Haddad, one of the suggestions we had was that they could, you know, extend it to a 3-year grant versus a 2-year, so we'll see if that goes anyplace. But either way, I think it is what it is.
We should consider it.
Okay. Kate, would you like to go next? Would you also give us an update on the drug meeting coming up this week?
I'm happy to. Wendy keeps putting it into the minutes. Actually, what I have, where I know we're working on the planning board for that.
Right.
And you are going to also work out what the communication vehicle for a bill submission for the CPAC. But I also my question is, Larry, I know you had said, and I know you're very committed, and we will have, but will we definitely be ready for the discipline on the 16th? Are there any updates? I know the school council at the high school was working on that. I seem to be getting a lot of questions and didn't know if there was an update yet or if it will be definite. Will the high school council be ready for coming back to us?
Hopefully on the 18th. Jeff will be here for the SIP, and hopefully you'll be able to take care of that at the same time.
Well, I'll just reiterate what we said at our last meeting, and thank you, Wendy, for getting on in the meetings. The committee will actually be meeting this Wednesday night at the Foxborough High School cafeteria. It's our follow-up meeting for the alcohol and drug forum. And the group had met just last month. I think there was 10 to 13 individuals that were very excited about the participation. And the group came up with 7 very specific action items and agenda. And there are a couple programs that they asked each person to come tomorrow, be ready to say if this is something that we may want to do. And I understand that the JCs have offered they may assist with what it may take to do this leadership development that might enhance our peer leadership. So I'm very excited, and that's Wednesday night at 7 p.m. at the Foxborough High School cafeteria.
Particularly important if you continue to read the Sun Chronicle or the Foxborough Reporter. It seems like week after week there is a student arrested for alcohol use or alcohol abuse, not just in our community but in all communities. But our community is plagued with this as well, and as we said at our meetings, it is a serious issue, and we have to find a way to get parents to understand that it's a very serious issue, and it requires a community to work together. So we just want to continue these meetings and continue the support. Again, I want to look to not only places like the JCs for funding, but we also have revolving accounts if we need to tap for a little bit of money. This is a very big safety issue. We have lots of students at risk. And I would particularly say that when I read these articles, and often, not all the time, but it's often athletes that are written up in the newspaper, and we've got to find a way with our athletic coaches to make sure that they understand how serious the issue is, and they're working with their students, they're working with their athletes day in and day out, and the same for music and the same with the drama. But it's really important for these kids in the extracurricular activity who have a connection with their coach or have a connection with the music director, whatever, that they're hearing on a regular basis how important this issue is. We do not want to lose a child in this town because of a foolish decision. Anything else, Kate?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Katie?
I also applaud Mr. Theodos for his suggestion about accountability.
Yep.
There will be consequences, and if there's to their choices. They may make a choice, but it will be followed with a consequence. And we want that written into the handbook for the high school students next year.
With more serious consequences than we've ever had before.
Right.
And that's important. Especially for folks in extracurricular activity, this is pretty important to them. And hopefully this is the carrot that helps them either get help if they need it or not make bad decisions.
I do have one other thing. I would like to thank all of the wonderful teaching staff that we have in Foxborough, from preschool to the seniors, for all their careful planning and their encouragement in teaching of all our graduating class of 2007, and to each graduate, I wish good luck in whatever endeavor you've chosen to follow next year. Graduation is Sunday.
It's Sunday afternoon, that's correct. The only thing I have is Mr. Ballin, I will read your letter, and we will either discuss it at the next meeting or respond to you on that. And we'll work with you on other issues that you've brought forward that we haven't addressed, and we'll try to resolve those. I can't say you'll always agree with our decision, but at least we'll respond, all right?
At least we know when we disagree.
Okay, well, that's good. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll do that.
I'll second that.
Motion by Bevy, second by Kate. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Meeting adjourned at 10:35.
Good night.
While you're thinking, oh, that's dump the date right there.